owner of the US Mega Farmest Videos Purimon Para Intratnamiento Wino Infringed de Recos de Autoriales. Los de Recos de la Novela y la Imagen son del autor original, no reclama más propiedad. No te gusta esperar y quieres escuchar este fanfic completo ahora? Suscríbete a nuestro Patreon, donde encontrarás los mejores fanfics. Chapter 276, Pet System Upgrade. As the light flashed in Kinzu's hands, the golden python's eyes, which were originally extremely agile, suddenly fell into confusion. After a moment, in Kinzu's expectant eyes, the giant python's confused eyes gradually regained clarity, and the pair of originally dark brown pupils also transformed into gold, becoming more agile, as if they had wisdom. Wait, gold? Rubbing his eyes vigorously, Kinzu was a little stunned. Golden pupils? He had never heard of any creature with golden pupils. Looking at the giant python's body, the golden scales that seemed even brighter, my goodness, this is really a golden giant python. Ignoring the giant python that became more agile and kept spinning around his feet, Kinzu opened the system and looked at the properties of the giant python. Mutated golden python quality. Golden commander skills. Strangling LV5, Fast Moving LV3, Sprinting LV3, Ice Cone LV1, Earth Spike LV1 Growth Potential. 5 stars ding, congratulations to the host for having the first Golden Commander level pet. The pet system is being upgraded. Just as Kinzu was shocked by the inexplicably strong attributes of the giant python, a mechanical system prompt suddenly came from his mind. Pet system upgrade? What the hell is this? Listening to the mechanical sound in his mind, Kinzu was confused. It's upgraded already. And what the hell is that ice cone? Why does it look so much like World of Warcraft? I'm obviously playing a ranch cultivation game, okay? However, it was obvious that the system couldn't answer his profound questions. After waiting for a long time without any response, Kinzu had no choice but to change the question. System, how long will it take for this upgrade? It takes 3 days to upgrade the pet system. During this period, all functions cannot be used. This time the system did answer him, but the answer still made Kinzu feel depressed. He shook his head and put the idea in his mind behind him. There was no way, because it was a system. Looking up with curious eyes, Kinzu looked at the golden giant python crawling at his feet. In his mind, he signaled it to cast an ice cone at the sea not far away. He was really curious whether this ice cone had the same effect as those in the novels. If it was the same, he would be awesome. Following Kinzu's signal, the giant python slowly raised its big head with smooth lines, and slowly opened its big mouth under Kinzu's eager and somewhat uneasy gaze. As the giant python's mouth became bigger and bigger, a group of light water vapor slowly gathered in its slightly ferocious-looking big mouth. Gradually, more and more water gathered, and the more it gathered, the thicker it became. An ice cone with a length of 34 centimeters slowly moved in front of Kinzu. The cold air emitted from the ice cone made him shiver involuntarily. At this time, the giant python seemed to have reached its limit. With a slight hum, the ice cone shot towards the sea level at a speed that was invisible to the naked eye. Bang! After a small splash, the sea level gradually returned to calm. Even so, Kinzu's mouth could not close for a long time. This is even more powerful than a rifle. I want it to be invincible. Looking at the sea level in the distance with a stupid face, Kinzu was still muttering to himself. Fortunately, Zumengyu and the others were not around, otherwise they would have kicked him into the sea. But it seems that this can't be used many times. Turning his head to look at the giant python that had become soft at his feet, Kinzu was also a little disappointed in his heart. He didn't know how many times he could use it in a day. After staying with the giant python for a long time at the beach, Kinzu also specially summoned the happed-out couple to come over, so that the guys could get familiar with each other's smell first. If anyone dared to rebel first, he would be the first to kill them. You know, eagles have always been the natural enemies of snakes. After encountering pythons, they usually won't let them go. Kinzu was really afraid that one day when he was not at home, these two guys would not stop and fight each other. However, because of Kinzu's introduction, everyone has become familiar with each other. As for whether they will really live in harmony in the future, who knows? After several guys got familiar with each other, Kinzu let the giant python stay at the beach for the time being and take it slowly in the future. After returning to the villa with the two little guys who kept looking back every few steps, the living room, which was originally very lively, seemed a little deserted at this moment. Hey, Eva, where are they? As the two little guys reluctantly withdrew their gazes from a distance, Kinzu sat down on the sofa and looked at Eva, who was watching TV on the side, and couldn't help but feel curious. "Oh, my sisters went shopping, and I'm the only one at home." He took a blueberry and put it in his mouth. Eva also gave one to the food squirrel next to him. One person and one mouse, they sat comfortably on a sofa, eating snacks and watching American TV series. "Why didn't you go with us? You should buy some clothes, too." Looking at Eva's outfit today, Kinzu had some impression, as if he remembered that she often wore it. Although her figure and other things were perfectly displayed, as a girl, these should be far from enough. "Oh, I don't have time to go. My sister asked me to stay and take care of you. Besides, I have a lot of clothes, all of which are at home. I just didn't bring them when I came." Hearing Eva talking about home, Kinzu couldn't help but think of something else, so he asked, "By the way, Eva, how is Lester doing recently? Is he okay at home?" Eva, who was eating blueberries, froze slightly, and was a little speechless. Her originally good mood suddenly turned negative. "What's wrong?" Seeing that something was wrong with Eva, Kinzu hurriedly asked with concern, "Did he say something wrong?" "Nothing, it's just that Lester still can't get rid of his gambling addiction." As she spoke, Eva's face became more and more sad. Although she now has her two sisters as a tie, she is not sure when her father's gambling addiction will strike again. It's good that he's okay. Gambling addiction is something that needs to be cured slowly. Hearing Eva's words, Kinzu also seemed helpless. If it goes on like this, a perfect family will probably be completely destroyed by gambling. 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 Kinzu muttered a few words in his mouth, and suddenly, as if he reacted, a confident smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. "Eva, leave it to me, I promise to make Lester change completely." Kinzu smiled confidently at Eva, and felt that if he still couldn't change him like this, then he would really be hopeless. "Thank you Langzi for the reward of 500 starting coins." "Thank you." Chapter 277 Reasons to Stay. P.S. Thank you Langzi for building a reward building for Liun in the book review area. This is Liun's first building. I am very grateful for Langzi's support for Liun. I also hope that book friends can go to the starting point book review area and build a building for Liun in the check-in building of Xiao Langzi. I am very grateful. Looking at the confident Kinzu, Eva smiled bitterly and said nothing. Her father's gambling addiction has troubled her for many years. Now, she is a little desperate. Although Eva obviously showed distrust, Kinzu did not explain. Sometimes, explanations are useless and can only be proved by facts. In the evening, Kinzu was lazily lying on a lounge chair in the open-air garden on the second floor, crossing his legs and looking at the sunset in the sea in the distance. Beside him were two snow-white half-sized huskies. Now they can no longer be described as little guys. Although they are still small, they have grown a lot compared to when they came. At this moment, they are lying comfortably not far away, in the simple palace specially prepared for them, playing with each other bored. The setting sun, emitting golden light, seemed to be deliberately placed on the sea level by someone, reflecting a large area of seawater with golden light. Occasionally, the sea breeze brought up waves, making them look even more numerous. In addition, some unknown seabirds kept circling and hunting in the ocean under the setting sun, adding a bit of dynamic beauty to this picture. It is said that the setting sun in the Yellow River is round, but Kinzu now feels that the setting sun in the sea is rounder. Woof woof woof. Next to him, the two huskies who were originally bored and chasing their tails suddenly barked wildly at the distance. The crisp little voices were heard far and wide in the quiet dusk. Looking up in the direction of the ranch, on the small road in the distance, a black monster was driving towards this side quickly. "You are so jumpy, wait and see if your mother will come back to punish you." Walking over, Kinzu patted the two guys' heads and drove them aside to play by themselves. "Isn't that the black monster coming his night the 15th? And seeing this car, it is not difficult to guess who's the mother he is talking about. As for whether the other party will agree, these are not within his consideration. According to him, what is his, and what is not is his even if he snatches it away." After a while, the black monster slowly stopped at the door, and two women with big bags came down first. Who else could it be but Zumengyo and Surui? They waved to Kinzu upstairs, and Zumengyo took Surui into the villa carrying big bags. Did they rob them all? Kinzu was about to go downstairs when he found Zumengyo and Surui coming out of the villa again. In his stunned eyes, they once again took out a lot of large and small bags from the large trunk of the night the 15th. Shaking his head helplessly, Kinzu walked to the living room. Mingyo, what are you doing? Pointing at the large and small bags piled on the ground, Kinzu was very speechless. He had never realized that this girl had a talent for shopping. Oh, aren't we going back? Bring some things for family and friends, and Ruby also has to bring some gifts to the company's employees. Mingyo and Surui were packing up the things they bought today in the living room. Although her tone was a little relaxed, looking at her current state, you can imagine her current mood. Are you really going back? Kinzu's steps couldn't help but pause, looking up at her in surprise, and his tone seemed very reluctant. Stopping what she was doing, and ignoring Surui's complaints, Mingyo lay down on the sofa next to her, sounding very powerless. Yeah, if I don't go back, the one at home will get mad. Alas, I don't want to go back either, Mingyo. How about we open a law firm in the United States? Seeing that Mingyo was being lazy, Surui also threw away the things in her hands, and followed her example, lying lazily on the sofa on the other side. When they heard her words, Kinzu and Mingyo's eyes lit up. They looked at each other. Yeah, why don't you open a law firm in the United States? Then you can live in the United States permanently. The more he talked, the more excited he became. Kinzu felt that this idea was completely feasible, and he couldn't help but clap his hands hard, which startled Surui, who had just laid down. Well, I'm just saying this casually. This law firm is not that easy to open. Surui rolled her eyes helplessly, and gently stroked a pair of plump breasts that were frightened and throbbing, and said embarrassedly, "Why?" Kinzu got a little anxious when he heard Surui say that. What had just been agreed upon, so why did they change their minds so quickly? Are you a fool? Even for this small case, we need David's help. We are well versed in American laws. How can we fight a lawsuit after you let us come to the United States? She glared at Kinzu, who was anxiously standing aside. Isn't it said that only women in love have 0 IQ? How come men are no better than women? Kinzu was speechless after hearing Surui's words. Yes, this small case was solved thanks to David. If there is a case in the future, can't always trouble him. And let's not talk about whether he is willing or not, just talking about the salary can track down a law firm. Salary? Thinking of this, Kinzu's eyes rolled around involuntarily, and he laughed again. We can hire a lawyer. If there is anything, let the lawyer do it. You can just be the boss. Hire a lawyer? Surui, who was lazily lying on the sofa to rest, was also stunned by Kinzu's words. Yes, if she doesn't know how to do it, she can hire a lawyer. But why did she and her best friend open this law firm in the first place? Oh, because she and her best friend both studied law. They were bored after graduation, so they said they would open a law firm for fun, and she and her best friend were the main lawyers in the law firm. But if she hired a lawyer, what's the point of opening this law firm? Surui, who was getting more and more confused the more she thought about it, couldn't help but fall into a vicious circle, getting deeper and deeper, until she couldn't extricate herself. Hey, Ruby, what's wrong with you? Mingyo next to her looked at Surui for a long time without moving, and called her softly a few times. Oh, I'm fine. Coming back from her thoughts, Surui quickly shook her head and put the lawsuit behind her. Anyway, she had to go back first this time. As for what to do in the future, she would talk about it when she came back. After dinner, Kinzu walked alone with heavy steps to the open-air garden on the second floor. Hearing the sound, the 2 harpy eagles that had flown away during the day squatted on the railings and opened their eyes vigilantly. When they saw that it was Kinzu, they slowly narrowed their eyes again. Thanks to Fengxi for the reward and support. Thank you. Chapter 278. The Eve of Leaving. Sitting down on the recline, Kinzu shook his shoulders comfortably and looked up at the starry night sky. Perhaps because of the good air, the starry sky here seems to be much lower than that in the city, and it feels as if it is right in front of you and can be touched with just a stretch of your hand. Kinzu, why aren't you asleep yet? What are you doing here? Just as Kinzu was lost in thought, a sudden woman's voice in his ear frightened him and made him shiver. Looking back, it turned out to be Mingyo, who seemed to have just taken a shower, wearing a white silk nightgown, with wet hair scattered behind her head. Mingyo, why are you walking without making any sound? I was scared to death. Kinzu complained in a slightly exaggerated tone, patting his chest in a pretentious manner. It's true that although he exaggerated a little, he really didn't lie. In this dark night, surrounded by the quiet night, a woman's voice suddenly came to his ears. It was good enough that he was not scared. TSK, I don't know what dirty things you are thinking about. You didn't even hear such a loud noise. Zhu Mengyo curled her lips in disdain, holding a dry towel in her hand, and was constantly wiping her wet long hair. She had just come out of the bathroom and hadn't had time to blow dry her hair when she saw Qin Zhu walking outside. Out of curiosity, she didn't care about blowing her hair and followed him directly. Of course I'm thinking about you. Ah, what are you doing? Zhu Mengyo, who was wiping her hair, couldn't help but stiffen her body and couldn't help but scream in a low voice. Mengyo, I miss you so much. As if talking to himself, or as if answering her question, Qin Zhu murmured in a low voice. Ah. No, Qin Zhu, let go. She struggled a little harder, but it didn't work at all. Zhu Mengyo couldn't help but cry out in a low voice, as if she was afraid of being heard. No, I won't let go. Qin Zhu's tone was firm, as if two children were arguing. Don't be like this, Qin Zhu, let me go first, or someone will see us. Seeing Qin Zhu's firm tone, Zhu Mengyo's voice became even softer, as if she was begging. Especially when she felt the hot breath coming from Qin Zhu's body, even though there were 2 layers of clothes between them, she could hardly breathe. It's so late, no one can see it. With a whisper, Qin Zhu's other hand also wrapped around her, and this time he was completely holding this well-behaved girl in his arms. Mengyo, are you really going back? Holding Zhu Mengyo in his arms, Qin Zhu sat quietly for a long time under the quiet night sky, until Zhu Mengyo's head gently rested on his chest, and then he asked softly. Hearing Qin Zhu's question, Zhu Mengyo in his arms was silent for a moment, and then she said in a slightly melancholy tone, Yes, I have to go back tomorrow. The flight seems to be around 3 in the afternoon. What do you think about what happened in the afternoon? Holding the beauty in his arms, Qin Zhu felt that he was getting angrier and angrier, and he felt that he couldn't suppress it no matter what, and one of his hands began to move involuntarily. What's the matter? Perhaps her attention was attracted by Qin Zhu's question, or perhaps she had acquiesced to this not too excessive intimate behavior. Zhu Mengyo did not slap the hand away from her waist, but looked at Qin Zhu with some confusion. Thank you for the reward from Langzi. I bet book friends to write a post in the check-in post of Xiao Langzi in the Kidian book review section. Liu Yun is very grateful. Chapter 279 finally confessed. Just bring your law firm to the United States. As he said that, Qin Zhu lowered his head and gently rubbed Zhu Mengyo's delicate face. Don't make trouble, it's itchy. With a sweet smile, Zhu Mengyo turned her head to avoid Qin Zhu's big head, but then she said helplessly, This law firm is not opened by me. Let's see what Rui and the others say. I'm just helping them inside. Well, that's perfect. Come here and help me. After hearing what Zhu Mengyo said, Qin Zhu remembered that she was just a helper. Don't make trouble. How will you and the others look at me? And what should I do when I come to your place? I'm not like you. I'm not bored every day. Zhu Mengyo rolled her eyes at this guy charmingly, and she complained in her heart, You said let me come, I'll come, you think it's too simple. Well. Qin Zhu was speechless this time. Yes, why did Zhu Mengyo come here? Stay with him at the ranch every day. It might be okay for a short time, but once the novelty wears off, can she still stay? Forget about her. If there is nothing to do, I guess I can't stay either. Okay, don't be like this. There's no rush for this. Let's talk about it later. I'll come over to play when I have time. Besides, you can also go back to China. Staying at the ranch every day, you should also go out and exercise properly. Turning her head to look at Qin Zhu's depressed face, Zhu Mengyo couldn't help but chuckle. Facing the hazy moonlight, the pretty face in front of Qin Zhu, which was slightly smiling, was so moving under the moonlight, as if it had been carefully carved by the creator, flawless. Yes, flawless. Qin Zhu's heart suddenly throbbed at this moment, and he couldn't help but say this word. Mengyo, will you be my girlfriend? There were no bright lights, no romantic roses, and no so-called vows of love. Qin Zhu just stared straight into Zhu Mengyo's moving eyes without blinking. As if she didn't react, Zhu Mengyo was slightly stunned for a moment, and looked at Qin Zhu with some uncertainty. Mengyo, will you be my girlfriend? Still looking straight into those beautiful eyes, Qin Zhu repeated what he had just said. This time, Zhu Mengyo heard it clearly, and looked at Qin Zhu blankly, not knowing what kind of answer to make. Why? Mengyo, don't you want to? After waiting for a long time, Qin Zhu couldn't help but look at her with some doubts. Did she still not agree to it? Or should she really get a bunch of roses and find a suitable day to come back? Burying her head deeply in Clean Yu's broad chest, Zhu Mengyo's tears could not stop flowing down, and she didn't know what to say. Will you agree? She really wants to agree, and she is willing to agree. But don't agree? She couldn't say this, and she didn't want to say it. At this moment, she really regretted why she followed curiously. If he didn't confess, it would be great, and the two of them could continue to maintain such a relationship. This is the best for both parties. What's wrong? Mengyo, don't cry, let's not talk about this. Feeling the wetness on his chest, Qin Yu was a little confused. What was going on? Shouldn't the script be like this? Qin Yu, let's not talk about this, okay? After choking up and saying this, Zhu Mengyo didn't wait for Qin Yu to answer. She suddenly broke away from his arms, stood up and hurried back to the bedroom. TMD, what's going on? Qin Yu scratched his hair irritably, looking at Zhu Mengyo slightly hurried back, feeling deeply frustrated. Is this a rejection? Is it a rejection? But it's not right, he has done everything he can, and she didn't refuse. Why is it like this? Thinking back to Zhu Mengyo's attitude, Qin Yu's head was full of lawsuits. Is it really because there are no roses and no romantic scenes? It shouldn't be. Standing up, Qin Yu walked back and forth in the open-air garden for a long time, until the already drowsy Habdao almost fainted, then he turned back to his room. As for Zhu Mengyo, when she returned to her room choking with sobs, she found that Surui was actually in her room. Wiping away the tears from the corners of her eyes, Zhu Mengyo's voice was still a little choked, and asked, Rui, why are you here? Yo, what's wrong with you? Shit, did Qin Yu bully you? Wait, go find him. Surui, who was originally watching TV in her room board, saw Zhu Mengyo running in crying, and her clothes were a little messy. Her first reaction was that she was bullied by Qin Yu. The anger in her heart suddenly surged to the maximum value. No, Rui, no, he didn't bully me. Grabbing Surui's shoulders, looking at her pretty face flushed with anger, he couldn't help but burst out laughing. Yo, are you okay? Don't scare me. Surui was startled by Zhu Mengyo's sudden laughter. She quickly helped her to sit on the sofa. She looked at her best friend who was not normal with concern, fearing that she would do something stupid. Don't worry, I'm really fine. Zhu Mengyo's originally heavy mood was slightly better after Surui did this, but when she thought of Qin Yu, she couldn't help but fall silent again. What happened? Tell me, didn't you say goodbye to him? How did it become like this? Did he do something to you? Her silence didn't matter, but Surui next to her was scratching her head anxiously. It looked like she was about to go to Qin Yu and fight to the death. You think too much, but, turning back to give this girl a blank look, Zhu Mengyo sighed deeply, lay on her back on the sofa, and seemed to be thinking about some profound questions over and over again. Just what? Tell me. Surui's temper, which was not very docile to begin with, was about to explode after being kept in suspense for many times. You should know about the incident that happened to me a few years ago, right? With a sigh, Zhu Mengyo gently closed her eyes, as if she was recalling some bad memories. Which incident? Surui muttered in confusion, and seemed to have thought of something. She looked up and asked in surprise, is it that incident? Yes, it was that incident. The person who was supposed to pick me up at school didn't arrive on time, so I was blocked by a few gangsters. Although I was rescued in the end, I was stabbed in the middle of the panic. As she spoke, Zhu Mengyo gently pressed her lower abdomen with one hand, with a look of pain on her face, as if she had returned to the accident that made her feel desperate. Oh, I'm not very good at building a building, I am sad, thank FNCI and ACKTLSTXPELACKDLM for their support, thank you. By the way, this name is really hard to type. I looked at it for a long time before I understood it. Si est escuchando esta novela en un canal distinto a mundo fanfic novelas, significat lo descarga and y subir en cines fuerzos invitamos cordialmente a visitar nuestro canal. Mundo fanfic novelas all encontrar la versión original de esta historia y podrás explorar muchas otras novelas de diversos narradores. Esperamos para sumergirte en un mundo de novelas increíbles. Chapter 280 Reason, Subscription Reward. Hearing this, Surui seemed to have a bad premonition, and one hand subconsciously touched the lower abdomen, where it seemed, as if seeing through Surui's thoughts, Zhu Mengyo closed her eyes, letting the tears of unwillingness roll down, choking and saying, yes, after that incident, although I was fine, but, I lost the most important thing as a woman. Reaching out and gently hugging Zhu Mengyo, who was crying beside her, Surui felt mixed emotions in her heart. She didn't expect that this good girlfriend who always played the role of a caring big sister around her would actually have such an experience. Did he confess to you? Although it was a question, it was said by Surui with a sense of affirmation. Gently nodding in her arms, Zhu Mengyo said in a trembling voice. He confessed to me, but I don't know how to answer him. I like him very much, but I can't give him a child. Why don't you tell him clearly? I believe he will accept you. Patting Zhu Mengyo's back gently, Surui comforted her softly. No, I dare not say it. I'm afraid that after I say it, we can't even be friends anymore. Shaking her head lightly, Zhu Mengyo didn't believe that a man would want a woman like her, unless he just wanted to play around. Qin didn't know the reason. He was depressed and didn't sleep well that night. When he got up the next morning, his eyes were almost as big as a national treasure. After washing up a little, Qin changed his clothes and looked in the mirror. Fortunately, although his eyes were a little bit sore, he was still a handsome guy overall. When he went downstairs, Surui and Zhu Mengyo had already gotten up. They were eating breakfast in the restaurant. Qin, good morning. Seeing Qin coming down, Zhu Mengyo smiled and nodded at him. She didn't look like what happened last night, except that her eyes were a little thicker. After carefully examining Zhu Mengyo, she was wearing makeup, which was rare today. She was wearing a plain white dress, and she looked much prettier than those big stars. After looking at her eyes, Qin compared them with his own national treasure eyes, and couldn't help but complain in his heart that it was better to be a woman. Good morning. He also smiled and nodded to the two women. Isn't she just a woman? A man's face can't be lost. Well, although his eyes have already betrayed him. In this slightly weird atmosphere, after finishing breakfast, Qin looked at the two women and said with a smile. When is your flight? The flight is around 12 noon. Surui didn't say anything. Zhu Mengyo looked at her and answered softly. Well, pack up, I'll drive you there later. Listening to Zhu Mengyo's weak voice, Qin scratched his head. What's going on? Why does she act like she's been wronged? It's obviously me who's been bullied by you, okay? Suddenly, Qin seemed to understand something. Men should be bolder. If you want to take advantage of a girl, you can't be too shameless. She just didn't answer you, not refuse. So while Surui was going upstairs, Qin sat on the sofa next to her. What are you doing? Like a frightened little rabbit, Zhu Mengyo's body tensed up for a moment, then she thought of something and slowly relaxed. Without answering her question, Qin made everything clear with his actions. Anyway, there was no one else in the living room, so the salty pig hand reached out and gently held her slender waist. Without waiting for her to react, Qin used the same trick again and leaned forward. Under her surprised, shy, happy, ashamed and angry eyes, his kiss was imprinted on her delicate red lips. Woo, the blush on Zhu Mengyo's face had not faded until the night the 15th drove onto Interstate 95. This bad guy was too bold to forcefully kiss her in the living room. Rui must have seen it. She secretly glanced at her best friend in the back seat. Sure enough, Surui was looking at her with an encouraging and weird look. The night the 15th was driving on the empty interstate highway. The sturdy black body of the car shone in the morning sun. The cars that occasionally passed by would involuntarily lower the windows and lean out to look at the metal behemoth. Turning on the radio, it was actually playing the theme song of Twilight. Hearing this song, Qin couldn't help but think of the sexy beauty Christine. After humming along for a few lines, Qin looked at Zhu Mengyo, who had slowed down a little, and said with a smile, Mengyo, do you know who I saw in New York last time? Who? Which big capitalist? Zhu Mengyo smiled and cooperated with Qin, tilting her head to watch him show off. The corners of her mouth raised a charming arc, and Qin looked straight ahead and said softly, Kristen, that's the Twilight girl. Is it her? Where did you see her? Doesn't she rarely show up? Hearing that it was Kristen, Zhu Mengyo was a little surprised. Although she was in China, she still liked this Twilight girl very much. This was also one of the few foreign female artists she liked. At a friend's banquet, she was the last guest. You like her very much? Qin asked with a smile when he saw the change in Zhu Mengyo's expression in the review mirror. After seeing her nod gently, he raised his eyebrows and continued to smile. How about this? When you are free, come back and I will take you to find her. This? Can you see her? Seeing Zhu Mengyo was somewhat interested, Qin quickly promised. Of course, it is still easy for me to see her. I promise to let you see her next time. Looking at Kinzu's solemn look, Zhu Mengyo smiled and nodded gently. In fact, it didn't matter whether she saw her or not. She was just looking for a reason to come next time. 3 hours passed quickly during the three people's chat. When the night the 15th drove into Kennedy International Airport, it was only 11 o'clock. It's noon now, let's go eat something first. After parking the car in the parking lot outside, several people got off the car. Kinzu raised his wrist to check the time, looked around, and suggested. The two women looked at each other and nodded in agreement. Anyway, they still had to eat on the plane. By the time we finished our meal at a restaurant near the airport, it was almost time. Chapter 281. Is he cheated already? Arriving at the airport, Kinzu took out the black card directly, and then sat in the VIP area with the two girls for a while, and the airport staff sent the tickets and other things over. In addition, there was a very beautiful blonde stewardess who came to lead the way for the few people, and they boarded the plane parked on the tarmac first. Kinzu, you must take good care of my Dudu, as well as Dahe and Xiaohe, and don't let them starve. As if recalling Dudu's reluctant eyes when he just left, and Dahe and Xiaohe's constant wagging tails, Zhu Mengyo reminded Kinzu with threat eyes. Don't worry, I will definitely treat them as my own children. Patting his chest and making a few promises, he calmed down the somewhat excited Zhu Mengyo. While Suruli was not paying attention, Kinzu quickly sneaked a sneak attack on Zhu Mengyo's cherry mouth, and then slipped off the plane in her angry eyes. Standing on the tarmac, Kinzu waited until the plane took off, and then turned around and left the airport. Although everyone was surprised that these three people were able to enter the plane in advance, no one said anything. After all, there are many privileged people in this world. The reason why they paid more attention to him was just because he was a yellow-skinned Asian. After leaving the airport, Kinzu sat in the car and remembered that there were a few gold bars that were about to oxidize in his backpack, as well as the notebook that he could not understand. With a wave of his hand, the yellowed notebook appeared in front of him. It was still the English that he could not understand, and the handwriting that was a bit sloppy. Kinzu secretly rubbed his forehead and opened the system panel. Dear host, to learn intermediate English, you need 100,000 points. Are you sure? Damn, 100,000 points? Listening to the mechanical prompt sound of the system, Kinzu was confused. Are you kidding me? It costs 10,000 to learn the elementary level, and 100,000 to learn the intermediate level. What about the advanced level? Does it cost 1 million? What about the higher level? Kinzu didn't dare to think about it. This is simply too scary, right? Why do I feel that after I can earn points, everything seems to be more expensive than before? Shaking his head, Kinzu chose to refuse. Damn it, spending 100,000 points just to read this crappy book, he felt it was not worth it. It would be faster to find someone who is good at Old English to translate it. After putting the yellowed notebook back, Kinzu flicked his hand and took out 2 more gold bars. Perhaps because of the time, the 2 gold bars no longer have that dazzling light. Even if this is the result of Kinzu washing several times, it is still the same. After weighing it, Kinzu estimated that it would be more than 300 grams. If calculated according to the current gold price of 270 per gram, it would cost 80,000 or 90,000 yuan per gram. Even if converted into US dollars, it would be more than 10,000 US dollars. TSK, this is really a windfall, and it seems that this kind of gold bar can still be sold as an old item. Thinking of this, Kinzu couldn't help but use an appraisal technique on the gold bar in front of him. 10 Liang gold bar production time. The first year of Qianlong weight. 315 grams. Sure enough, it is really a product of the Qianlong period. Kinzu muttered to himself, started the car, and headed towards Chinatown in New York. Although he had not been to New York very often, he still knew how to get to several famous attractions, and Chinatown was one of them. After arriving in Chinatown, Kinzu parked the car in the parking lot, then found a bag in the car and put all the 5 gold bars in the backpack into it. This kind of thing was really useless to him. After walking on the street for a while, Kinzu found a street specializing in jade and antique business. There were all kinds of shops on both sides of the street, but without exception, they were quieter than outside. When you get here, it's like 2 completely different worlds from the outside. There are people coming and going in Chinatown, and here, it's not to say that there are few people, but it's not much different. Moreover, the people who come here are all the kind of people who are taciturn, and they can be distinguished from those outside at a glance. After walking a few steps, Kinzu saw a shop called Yajin Chuan. This shop seems to be mainly selling ancient porcelain and some calligraphy and paintings, and occasionally, there are some small items such as ancient coins. When he walked into the shop, a girl in Chinsum came up immediately. This blonde beauty seemed to be mixed race, and she looked average, but her Mandarin was quite standard. She asked in a nice voice, "Good afternoon, sir, what can I do for you?" "Excuse me, do you accept gold here?" "Ancient gold?" Kinzu took out a gold bar from the bag and gestured to the blonde waiter. "Sir, please wait a moment, I will call the shopkeeper out." Looking at the simple gold bar, the girl was stunned for a moment, and hurriedly trotted to the back hall. After a while, an old man with white hair and a childlike face came out. The old man was about 60 years old, wearing a casual tang suit, and the whole person looked kind and a little oppressive. After the old man came out, he looked at Kinzu for a moment, and asked with a smile, "Hello, sir, I am the shopkeeper of this store, my last name is Chen, are you selling gold bars?" "Yes, shopkeeper Chen, please take a look." After a few polite and modest words, Kinzu always felt that this old man seemed familiar. "Well, it's from the Qianlong period, the quality is not bad, are you going to sell it?" The old man just casually looked at the gold bar in his hand and said, "Well, old man, don't you need to test it or something?" Seeing that the old man was so sure, Kinzu kindly reminded him, "Ha ha, don't worry, young man, I'm not old and blurry. This is indeed from the Qianlong period. How were you going to sell it?" After laughing a few times, the old man seemed very happy and looked at Kinzu with a smile. "Just give me a price." Touching his nose, Kinzu smiled awkwardly. He had already recognized who the old man was. Wasn't he the old man standing next to him when he first bought something in the antique street? "Well, according to the current gold price of 270,000 yuan, how about this gold bar, 100,000 yuan? The old man took the gold bar to the electronic scale and weighed it. Kinzu nodded and said that he had no objection. This was not a particularly rare thing. A premium of 20,000 yuan for one bar was very good. When he returned to the car again, there were more than $70,000 in his cart, which was also a windfall. When he started the car and was about to return to the manor, he remembered the design of his fish tank. It had been a month. Did Mobuka get what he wanted? As soon as he took out his mobile phone, Kinzu patted his forehead. Wasn't he in New York? Why was he calling? After restarting the car, Kinzu drove towards the apartment that On had rented. When he got downstairs, Kinzu parked the car and walked upstairs carrying some fruits he bought from the supermarket. Taking out the key that On had given him, Kinzu opened the door and walked in. There was no one in the living room. He had just put the fruits on the coffee table when he heard intermittent pop sounds coming from the bedroom. And mixed with the loud moans of a woman, this sound seemed to be from Mobuka. Thanks to Fengxiai for the reward and support. Chapter 282 Who is the adulterer? Instantly, Kinzu felt a surge of hot blood rushing to his head, and then quickly spread to his limbs. Although he had heard that foreign girls were very open-minded, as a traditional Chinese man, he still could not accept such a thing. He walked quickly to the front of the room and listened at the door. Yes, it was Mobuka's voice, and there seemed to be another woman's voice inside. Could it be Onid? Thinking of this, Kinzu could no longer remain calm. He suddenly raised his foot and kicked the exquisite door directly. Bang! With a loud noise, the door opened. Kinzu stood at the door with a frosty face and looked at the scene inside. The two women in the room were also frightened by the sudden loud noise. Mobuka, who was already at the top, screamed and trembled all over. Wait, two women. Kinzu rubbed his eyes hard at the door. The frost on his face had long disappeared, replaced by a face full of confusion and surprise. Moreover, one of the two women was not the Onid he had imagined, but someone Kinzu could never have imagined. "Ah, Clean, Kinzu, why are you here?" Looking at Kinzu standing stupidly at the door, Mobuka's voice was a little lazy and a little nervous. In comparison, the other woman seemed much calmer than Mobuka, and only pulled the thin silk quilt to one side to cover her leaking spring light. Not only did she not panic because of Kinzu's appearance, but she directly reached out and embraced Mobuka's tender body, and raised her eyebrows at Kinzu provocatively. Ahem, well, you guys continue. After coughing twice in embarrassment, Kinzu decisively retreated after being provoked by this woman. He closed the door with a big hole in it with his backhand, and came to the living room and sat down on the sofa. He needed to be quiet now. What the hell was going on? First one seemed to reject him, and now another one came and directly snatched the woman from him. The reverse scale of the dragon, touching it will kill you. Family and women are exactly the reverse scales of Kinzu. If he gave up on his own initiative, it doesn't matter, but if a woman he is in a relationship with cheats on him, then he definitely doesn't mind letting them try man's anger. After all, Kinzu is not those European and American men. He is still very simple now, yes, really simple. But now the problem comes. He is really cuckolded now, what should he do? If this is a man today, Kinzu will not say to kill him now, and after returning, he will find someone to give him a profound lesson. But this is a woman, and she is a famous woman. Thinking of this, Kinzu couldn't help but think of a famous saying, being a woman is not easy, and being a famous woman is even more difficult. Isn't it? Such a famous woman, such a beautiful big beauty, actually likes women, this is such a great sadness. And, she is here to snatch a woman from me? Thinking of a woman trying to snatch a woman from him, Kinzu suddenly felt a sense of frustration and a little bit of excitement. Yes, it was excitement. Just think about it, how exciting it would be to compete with a woman for a woman. In the bedroom, Mobuka gradually regained some strength and quickly broke free from Christine's arms. Yes, the other woman was Christine, the Twilight girl that Kinzu was talking about with Zumengyo just now. Christine. It's over now, what should I do now? Why did Kinzu suddenly come here? Mobuka said with some panic in her voice, and quickly picked up her clothes from the side and put them on. What are you afraid of? Just know it, at most you can kick him. Although she was a little panicked, Christine was not a little girl who had never seen a big scene. After forcing herself to calm down, she began to instigate Mobuka to kick Kinzu. If Kinzu knew that Christine had already started to do it, I wonder if he would just break in and mess with her. No, I have feelings for him, and he is the only man I have feelings for, and I don't want to go on like this. Shaking her head in panic, Mobuka decisively rejected Christine's devilish proposal, and then looked at her expectantly. Chris, can you go back first? I'll find you when I have time. Hearing this, Christine stared at her for a long time, and then nodded. Okay, I'll go back first, don't forget what you said. After saying that, she also found her clothes from the messy bed and began to put them on. After everything was tidied up, the two women tidied up their messy hair, and then opened the door and walked out. Just as Kinzu was sitting on the sofa, thinking about whether to sink Christine into the sea, or rush in now and ruin her without caring about her. The bedroom door with a big hole in it creaked and slowly opened from the inside. Mobuka, whose clothes were still a little messy, lowered her head and walked quickly towards the door with Christine, who looked proud. Kinzu said nothing. He just looked at the woman who had given him a bright green hat and walked out of the room proudly. He was still a little depressed in his heart. When he got outside, Christine turned around and looked at this lovely girl, smiling and patting her fresh face. Baby, don't forget, come to see me when you have time. After saying that, Christine turned around and walked downstairs. Mobuka stared at her leaving figure blankly, not knowing what she was thinking. After a while, she closed the door with a pop, turned around and slowly moved to Kinzu's side. As she approached, a special fragrance of a woman after lovemaking also came into Kinzu's nostrils, continuing to color his already uneasy heart. Ahem, Mobuka, how did you get together with her? Looking up at this Mobuka, who looked like a young wife who had suffered a lot of grievances, Kinzu's teeth were a little sore. Why do women like to do this? After a long while, Mobuka was still silent, without saying a complete sentence. Seeing this, Kinzu stretched out his hands to hold Mobuka's slender waist, let her sit in his arms, and kissed her gently on the cheek. It's okay, just tell me, how did you get together? I remember you didn't know each other for long. Today's third update, extra update for Xiaoyo Langzi's Helmsman, chapter 283. On it in panic, please subscribe and reward. Kinzu smiled helplessly, listening to the even breathing sound coming from her ear soon. It seems that she was really tired today. But there is no way, who made her so excited today? No, it should be someone who dared you to cheat. If I don't punish you, who else can I punish? Shaking his head, Kinzu threw all the thoughts in his mind behind his head, closed his eyes and fell asleep. What happened today was also a challenge for him. To compete with a Hollywood star for a woman, well, it's quite a sense of accomplishment. I don't know how long it took, but when Kinzu was sleeping in a daze, he was awakened by a scream. Rubbing his eyes, looking at Onid standing at the door of the bedroom, he subconsciously greeted her. Good morning, Onid. Clean, good morning to you too. Onid responded mechanically, and then she reacted and quickly turned to the living room. She gently suppressed her accelerated heartbeat with her hand. What's going on? Shouldn't Christine be here today? Why is Kinzu here? And what about the huge hole in the bedroom door? Have they met? What else happened? Oh my god, how could this happen? Onid was getting more and more confused the more she thought about it, and she grabbed her hair with her hands. She could only pray to God in her heart, hoping that things would turn out well. Kinzu was a little dazed when he saw Onid running away. What happened? I'm not that scary, am I? Clean, what's wrong? Mobuka, who was standing next to him, was also awakened from her sleep by the sudden movement, and rubbed her slightly confused eyes and looked at Kinzu. Oh, it's okay, Onid is back, but she seems to be very afraid of me now. Rubbing his nose, Kinzu has now recovered from his confusion and started to get out of bed and put on his clothes. Oh, there are pajamas prepared for you in the closet, put on your pajamas. He responded in a daze, then turned over and went back to sleep. As for whether he was afraid of you, do I need to ask? Which normal person is not afraid of the object when cheating? Kinzu took out a brand new set of men's silk pajamas from the closet and put them on. He looked in the mirror. Well, it's not bad, it suits him well. But I didn't take a shower, and I always felt something was wrong with my body, but I couldn't care less now. There was a little sheep waiting for me to ravage outside. Hi, baby, long time no see. As soon as he went out, Kinzu pretended to know nothing and opened his arms to greet Onid. Yes, Clean, long time no see, did you miss me? Onid responded dryly, walked forward and hugged Kinzu. Of course I miss my baby, but I heard that you and Christine have been very close recently. Yes. Onid's voice seemed to be crying. Kinzu saw that it was not good. This was a bit too much. Why is this girl so timid? Okay, baby, I won't say anything. You should stay with Mobuka from now on. Do you hear me? Really? You don't blame us? Onid raised her pretty face in surprise and asked with a choked voice. No, he's not a man. If he was a man, I would have sunk him into the sea to feed the fish. Anyway, he was not angry, but just a little aggrieved. This was a slap in the face for a woman, and this revenge must be avenged. Clean, you're so nice. Hearing Kinzu's promise, Onid immediately smiled, raised her hands and wrapped them around Kinzu's neck, and then took the initiative to give her a kiss. How could she refuse the beauty who came to her door? Ah! What are you doing? With a cry, Kinzu stood up suddenly, picked up the beauty and rushed to the bedroom. As for Mobuka in the bedroom, oh, sorry, since he knew that the two were also in a relationship, Kinzu no longer had any scruples about sleeping in the same bed. The next morning, Kinzu was awakened by the sound of an alarm. Rubbing his dazed eyes, he reached out and pressed the alarm on the windowsill cabinet. Clean, what time is it? 8:30. Kinzu glanced at the time and said casually. 8:30? It's over, I'm going to be late. The exclamation startled Kinzu, and before he had time to experience the taste of it, he was pushed open. Onid sat up quickly, picked out a set of clothes from the closet next to her, and rushed into the bathroom. Her speed was so fast that she didn't look lazy at all. What is she doing? Kinzu was stunned and turned his head to look at the other side, where Mobuka was curled up in his arms, blinking her charming eyes. She has to go to the laboratory. Their professor has the weirdest temper in the school. He hates it most when students are late. And now is the critical time of the experiment. Being late is not fun. As he said this, Mobuka looked towards the bathroom with deep sympathy. Poor Onid, it was a good thing that she did not choose to stay in school. So awesome. What does this old professor research? Kinzu suddenly became interested. As far as he knew, the tutors in the university should be very easygoing. After all, everyone can be considered an adult. Moreover, old guys with weird tempers like this usually have some skills. Thanks to Fengxi for the reward and support. Today is the 5th update, and an extra update for the Prodigal Son, Part 3, Chapter 284 Return to the Ranch, Subscription and Reward. This old professor seems to be very authoritative in biology, but I don't know what he is researching specifically. After she finished speaking with some uncertainty, Mobuka yawned again and went to sleep. She didn't have to go to class anyway, so why not sleep? And the dead guy next to her had to toss her in the middle of the night yesterday. If she didn't make up for it, she would have dark circles under her eyes. Clean, I'm going to class first. It's too late. After changing her clothes and coming out of the bathroom, Onid hurriedly greeted Kinzu and walked out. Seeing her hurried look, Kinzu smiled and asked, "Baby, do you need me to take you? I drove here." "No, dear, you can sleep a little longer. By the way, don't forget to fix that door for me today." After saying that, Onit blew a kiss to Kinzu, then opened the door and hurried away. After Ron had left, Kinzu and the others slept until noon, and then got up to the protest of their stomachs. Mobika dragged her lazy body to wash up first, while Kinzu took out his mobile phone to order a takeaway, and then called Jennifer to ask her to find a company to replace the door for him. After giving her the address, Kinzu hung up the phone. Looking at the unlocked bathroom door, he laughed twice. "Ah, how did you get in? Get out, don't make trouble." After a while, Mobika's panting begging for mercy came from the bathroom. When the two finished lunch, it was already past 2 in the afternoon, and the bedroom door was fixed in less than 20 minutes under the personal supervision of the manager of the decoration company. "Mobika, do you want to go back?" Sitting on the sofa in the living room, Kinzu looked at Mobika, who was resting her head on his thighs and watching a boring American TV series. "Ah, are you going back today?" Hearing this, Mobika sat up in surprise and looked at Kinzu. "Why did he go back just after come in?" "I'm here to send my friend back home. Besides, I have a lot of things to do at my ranch. The dock will also be rebuilt, and the contract will be signed tomorrow." Kinzu shrugged helplessly. He felt that he was really busy. If it weren't for the trouble she had caused him, he would have gone back to the ranch yesterday. "Well, I'll go too. Otherwise, Joseph will probably come to New York to take me back." She sighed with some disappointment. She really couldn't bear to leave Kinzu and Onit. "Ha, let's pack up and go, otherwise it will be dark when we go back." She took out her cell phone and called Onit. After a few rings, no one answered. Kinzu thought she must be busy, so he typed a text message and sent it to her. Mobika packed a few clothes, then took a thick stack of documents and followed Kinzu downstairs. After the two got on the domineering armored off-road vehicle downstairs, Onit's text message came back. Sure enough, Kinzu guessed correctly. In the text message, Onit said that she was busy just now, and she was very reluctant to leave Kinzu and Mobika, and asked them to visit her often. After Kinzu read it, he wrote another message and sent it to her. After more than 10 messages were sent back and forth, Onit said that the professor was angry and wished him a safe journey. Putting away the phone, looking at Mobika who was looking at him jokingly, Kinzu directly stretched out his hand and gently twisted her fair and tender face, and said with a smile, "What are you looking at? Hurry up and sit down, fasten your seatbelt, let's go." Humph, biased, so gentle to her, but mean to me. Mobika pouted in dissatisfaction, but she still obediently fastened her seatbelt. After all, this is related to her life. Then the car started, and the night the 15th made a roar and drove towards the bustling New York street. On the way, Kinzu took out the English notebook that he couldn't understand from the storage column, handed it to Mobika next to him, and said with a smile, "Baby, take a look at this, do you recognize the words on it?" "What is this? I seem to have seen it somewhere." Mobika took the notebook handed over by Kinzu and flicked through it casually, and then she couldn't take her eyes away. Kinzu was delighted and asked hurriedly, "Do you know it?" Unexpectedly, Mobika answered more directly, "No." Rolling his eyes, Kinzu complained in his heart, "Why are you looking so hard if you don't know it? This seems to be written in a dialect. I know the words separately, but when they are combined, it's a bit confusing. Moreover, this dialect seems to have been seen somewhere." As if seeing through Kinzu's little thoughts, Mobika explained with a smile. Kinzu was even more speechless when he heard it. "Isn't this nonsense? He also knows it when it is separated, although he knows less. Then in the end, do you know it or not? Well, let me study it." After saying that, Mobika stopped paying attention to Kinzu and began to slowly flick through the notebook in her hand, and took out her mobile phone from time to time, as if she was checking something. Until they arrived at the gate of her ranch, she didn't see her studying anything, so Kinzu had to remind her helplessly, "Baby, you're home, have you studied anything?" "Ah? So fast?" As if a little surprised, Mobika raised her head through the car window and looked at the familiar home, then she reacted. "This seems a bit difficult. I only understood a little bit. It seems to be a naval officer's notes." "Naval officer's notes? When was it?" Seeing that this girl seemed to really understand this notebook, Kinzu couldn't help but become interested, and he was no longer in a hurry to get off the car. "Well, it should be. It seems to be around 1914. I haven't figured out the specific year yet. Mobeka was not quite sure whether her guess was right or not. She only knew part of it and could only rely on her own guesses. It's okay, just take this back and study it slowly. Smiling and waving his hand, Kinzu didn't take the notebook too seriously. He was just curious about the identity of this person and why he died there. Logically speaking, the place is neither a reef area nor a shipwreck nearby, and there is no dangerous terrain around the cave. How could a naval officer be trapped to death there? Is this guy a deserter? Hey, Clean, why don't you go in now? It seems that the car has been parked here for too long and has attracted Joseph's attention. Moreover, such a coquettish car is not common in the whole of Revere. No, it should be said that it is not common in the whole of Boston. It's a new week. Leoyun continues to ask for subscription recommendations and rewards. I have a day off today. I have been sitting in front of the computer all day and feel that my body is hollow. Chapter 285. Aunt's distress. Hehe, Joseph, I brought Mobeka back. Kinzu opened the car door and walked out. He pointed to the co-pilot's seat, raised the thick stack of design drawings in his hand, and said with a smile, I happened to go to New York today, and then I took the design drawings of my fish tank and brought her back. Oh, thank you so much, Clean. You don't know, I was racking my brains for this girl. Joseph stretched out his hand and shook hands with Kinzu, looking at his daughter who got off the co-pilot's seat, shaking his head helplessly. Joseph, you're saying bad things about me again, aren't you? After getting out of the car, Mobeka seemed to have changed, showing a completely different state from when he was with Kinzu, jumping up and down to pull Joseph's beard. He was stunned. Okay, Mobeka, stop it, Keen is still here. Joseph covered his pitiful beard with his hands and surrendered first. While saying this, he also winked at Kinzu, as if he had discovered something. Ahem, since there's nothing else to do, I'll go back first. The ranch is still busy. After saying hello to the two, Kinzu wanted to slip away. Under Joseph's burning gaze, he felt uncomfortable all over. Well, you go back first. Leave this with me. I'll give it to you when I understand it. By the way, when the fish tank starts construction, remember to notify me. I want to watch it. Mobeka waved at Kinzu, and he looked like he should leave quickly, which made Kinzu laugh. Well, Joseph, then I'll go back first. After saying hello to Joseph again, Kinzu got into the car and turned around, walking towards his ranch. Okay, let's go in. Everyone has gone far away. Reaching out and patting Mobeka's little head, Joseph couldn't help sighing in his heart. It's only been a short time, and you care so much about that kid, but you don't care about me. Who saw him? I just saw him off. Mobeka was a little unwilling after being patted on the forehead by her father, and began to pester her father and act like a spoiled child. Who came just now? Was it Clean? Why didn't you invite the guest in to sit down? At this time, Jiro came out of the villa, looked at her daughter who rushed towards her, and asked with a smile. Yes, it was Keen. He was busy at the ranch, so he left first. Mobeka said a few perfunctory words. She didn't want to talk more about Kinzu, so she changed the subject and asked, by the way, where is your brother? Why didn't I see him? Joseph and Jira, who came from behind, looked at each other, smiled tacitly, and followed her words. He went to play at the neighbor's house. He should be back soon, right? Before she finished speaking, she heard a crisp child's voice from outside, which made Mobeka a little crazy. Hey, Mobeka, was that Keen's car just now? So cool, I think I only saw this one in Boston, it's so cool. At the same time, a handsome little boy quickly ran towards the few people from outside. Kinzu didn't know what happened after he left. After he drove back to the ranch, he just caught up with dinner time. Boss, you're finally back. Seeing Kinzu coming back, Eva was obviously relieved. After putting the last dish in her hand on the dining table, she asked Kinzu to sit down. What's wrong? Did something happen? Sitting at the dining table, eating the dinner that Eva carefully prepared, Kinzu was still very confused. Didn't he see John call him? Well, it's all normal, it's just that a few little guys miss you. Pointing casually at the little guys who were queuing in the corner and enjoying the delicious dinner, Eva would not say that she didn't sleep well at night because of Kinzu. As for why, it was because of that damn python. Ever since she knew there was such a python in the manor, Eva felt like something was following her even when she went out. Especially since she couldn't see where this guy was, it would be better if you let it stay in one place. At worst, she could just stay away from it in the future. Now that she couldn't see it but knew it must be there, she felt like she was going crazy. Kinzu looked up, but couldn't tell if those guys missed him in any way. It seemed that except for little Jerry, who had just snatched half an apple from him, the guys had been playing by themselves. Picking up the front claw of a lobster, Kinzu peeled it while asking with a little dissatisfaction, "What happened?" "Dale, tell me." Dale, who was eating quietly nearby, heard this, glanced at her blushing sister next to her, chuckled and said, "Nothing, boss, it's the python you brought back. When you were away, Eva was always worried that it would go crazy. Didn't I let it hide? Are you still afraid?" Kinzu couldn't help but wonder when he heard that it was this matter. Did the guy sneak out by himself and was seen by Eva? Dale's mouth twitched slightly, and he said helplessly, "Boss, don't you know that the unknown is the most terrifying?" "Oh, well," Kinzu looked at Eva's look of approval, and suddenly felt a sense of frustration. Could it be that he had been away from the lives of ordinary people for too long? Ahem, well, how about I let it out in a few days? Looking at Eva's blushing face next to him, Kinzu asked tentatively. "Well, it's best to let it out. It's best to let it stay in a fixed place first, so that everyone will feel relieved. After all, snakes are not like dogs. They are cold-blooded animals." Hearing Kinzu say this, Eva nodded vigorously beside her. Seeing it, she felt at ease. At worst, she would stay away from it in the future. Okay, then it's settled. When things are done in a few days, let John bring everyone here. Kinzu finally peeled the shrimp meat in his hand, dipped it in the seasoning and put it in his mouth. He narrowed his eyes in satisfaction. These seafood and other things are his favorite. Eva, who was standing by, saw that Kinzu loved to eat, so she picked up one and helped him peel it. Then she suddenly remembered something, so she smiled and said, "By the way, boss, Mr. Ons came to see you this morning and said that the sprinkler system will be installed in 2 days. Well, it's done, right? Didn't you pay them? Why did you come to me?" Eating the shrimp meat peeled by Eva, Kinzu felt that this was life, but why did Ons come to him? He doesn't look very well. I heard that Uncle John has been urging him these past 2 days. I guess he came to explain to you. Wiping her hands, Eva said uncertainly. After all, she was not with the cowboys now. There were some things she was not very clear about. Thank you Fengzi and Aobaki's online name for your support. Thank you Langzi for your support of 500 starting points. Chapter 286 Send Eva to school. John is urging him. Why? Looking at the time, it was still early, so Kinzu took out his cell phone from his arms and called directly. The phone just rang twice before it was picked up. Aunt's slightly tired voice came from the topic. "Hello, Mr. Clean, hello. Well, Aunts, I heard from Eva that you looked for me this morning. It's like this, Mr. Clean, the workers have been rushing to meet the deadline these 2 days. Now there are only about 2 days left to complete the project. I want to ask if the workers can take a break." The voice on the other end of the phone seemed very helpless. The workers were urged by John these 2 days and didn't sleep well at all. Even he didn't sleep more than 6 hours a day. Well, you can decide the time yourself. Don't be so anxious. I have plenty of time anyway. Eating the shrimp meat dipped in sauce, Kinzu didn't understand Aunts. Although he said that the faster the time, the better, but isn't that a convention? Did I still tell you? Hey, man, it's okay, take your time, I'll use it when it's ready. Mr. Clean, didn't you ask Supervisor John to come and charge us? Aunts on the other end of the phone was obviously stunned and almost burst into tears. Who let the other side of the phone be the only big customer of the company? Aunt almost regarded his request as an imperial edict. But, it sounds like someone is passing on a false imperial edict. Oh, I just asked him to keep an eye on you. It's just a routine for him to urge you. You should still take a good rest. Although Kinzu didn't know why John kept staring at Aunts, he had to take the blame, otherwise, John's words in front of Aunts would be useless in the future. Well, that's good, I'll ask the workers to slow down the progress, it's really unbearable if it goes on like this. Kinzu was a little dazed when he heard the voice on the phone. It seemed that there was some gratitude in Aunts' tone. Moreover, Kinzu raised his hand and looked at it. It was already 6 or 7 o'clock. It was dark outside. They were still working. When did the American workers become so easy to talk to? You are still working. Stop and have a rest. Don't wear yourself out. Kinzu was not concerned about them. He was thinking about himself. If something went wrong, the workers would sue him directly. That would be no joke. After hanging up the phone, Kinzu was a little confused. He was the contractor for once. Why was John watching so closely? However, Kinzu did not call John to ask. After all, the old man was doing it for the good of his own manor. It didn't matter if Fonts was wrong. At most, they would do the follow-up work. Time flies. In the blink of an eye, 3 days have passed. Early in the morning, Kinzu woke up from his sleep, rubbed his sleepy eyes, looked at the slightly gloomy sky outside through the curtains that were not closed tightly. It seemed like it was going to rain. Picking up the mobile phone beside him, Kinzu hid in the quilt and started surfing the internet as usual. These days, Kinzu felt like a landlord. He slept until he woke up naturally every day, and he didn't have to get up immediately after waking up. Since he came to the United States, he has not lived such a life for a few days. After talking sweetly with Zhu Mengyo in China for a while, Kinzu hung up that video reluctantly. Since the day she went back, the first thing Kinzu did every morning when he got up was to harass this girl, and under Kinzu's persistent offensive, Zhu Mengyo's defense line retreated step by step. If Kinzu suddenly confessed his love to her at this moment, she really couldn't guarantee that she could be cruel enough to refuse. After hanging up that video, Kinzu stayed in bed for a while, until he was really not sleepy, and then he got up reluctantly. You have to say, this guy is just weird. When he was at work, he couldn't wake up every day. If you ask him to sleep until noon, he can't wake up. But now that he doesn't have to go to work, he wakes up at more than 7 o'clock every morning, and he can't fall asleep no matter what. When he got downstairs, Dale was gone. Only Eva was alone with a book, flipping through it boredly. Kinzu leaned over to take a look. It's about ranch management. Hey, Dale, are you still interested in this? Sitting at the dining table, Kinzu picked up the bread slices prepared by Eva, casually made some sauce, and ate it like that. Well, it's okay, just a little boring. Flipping through the book in her hand, Eva said without raising her head. In the past 2 days, Kinzu specifically ordered her not to go anywhere and to prepare 3 meals a day for him in the villa, so she had no choice but to agree. Touching his nose awkwardly, Kinzu was actually just afraid of being bored at home, so he wanted to find someone to talk to. Moreover, Kinzu thought about it. If he remembered correctly, Eva should have a specialty in ranch management, right? Eva, I heard that there is a special cowboy school in Montana, which seems to teach about ranching. Are you interested in going to see it? Oh? I have heard of this university, but I am already past the age to go to school, okay? Eva looked up helplessly and rolled her eyes at this unreliable boss. Can you be more reliable next time? I say, Eva, don't you know there is a kind of school called adult university? There is also re-education there, okay? After drinking the milk in one breath, Kinzu raised the mobile phone in his hand. One good thing about the internet age is that you can learn about everything outside without leaving home. Boss, do you want me to go to adult university? Putting down the book in her hand, Eva turned around and looked at Kinzu, her face full of an expression of great interest. You know, the sisters are only high school students, but they have never been to college. It's not that they can't afford it, but their grades were not good at the time. The school doesn't care whether you do well on the ranch. What? Do you want to go? Kinzu raised his eyebrows. Now, he really wants to retrain Eva. John is a little older now, and the other people on the ranch have no problem being cowboys, but they are not good enough to be managers. Can I do it? Hearing Kinzu's affirmative answer, Eva herself became a little less confident. She thought she was good at ranch work, but she was really unsure about going to school. Don't worry, you can do it. So, he now has a new class at the beginning of each year, and he will send you that directly. Kinzu waved his hand and ignored Eva's resistance. Since she wanted to go, all the problems were not problems. Si est escuchando esta novela en un canal distinto a mundo fanfic novelas, significat lo descarga and y subir en sinis fuerzos invitamos cordialmente a visitar nuestro canal. Mundo fanfic novelas all encontras la versión original de esta historia y podrás explorar muchas otras novelas de diversos narradores. Te esperamos para sumergirte en un mundo de novelas increíbles. Chapter 287 Fish Tank Design. Just as he had settled the matter, a car horn honked outside the door. Hi, Clean, I'm here to see you. Woof woof woof, Kinzu just walked out of the door and saw Jack trotting towards the house. However, before he could get into the house, Da Hectors and Shao Hectors heard the sound and jumped out. Go away, you two stinky guys, go away. Little Jack stopped suddenly and looked at the two half-grown huskies barking at him in front of him. He was a little afraid to go forward. Although these two guys were just little guys to Kinzu, they were a very hateful beast to this little kid. Da hectares and shall hectares, come back, this is a friend, do you hear me? After scolding, Kinzu leaned forward, holding the non-existent cowboy hat with his hand, slightly bent down, and greeted. Good morning, respected Mr. Jack. Hello to you too, respected Keen. Little Jack Kid also took off the small hat on his head, imitated Kinzu's movements, and greeted Kinzu. Ha ha, Keen, are you here to tease me? He's wearing a formal dress, but you're greeting him with cowboy etiquette. I'm dying of laughter. At this time, Mobuka came up from behind and couldn't help laughing at the funny actions of the two. Is this cowboy etiquette? Kinzu scratched his head and felt a little embarrassed. He had seen this in a certain movie, but he couldn't remember it clearly after a long time. Fortunately, little Jack obviously didn't understand the difference between cowboy etiquette and gentleman etiquette. To him, those who treated him like an adult were all good people. Hey, Clean, where's your car? It's a cool one. Putting his top hat back on, little Jack adjusted his wrinkled dress a little, and then looked at Kinzu with expectation. What cool car? Are you talking about the night the 15th? He looked at this guy in confusion. Why did he ask this? Can you still drive? Clean, can you take me for a ride? Little Jack looked at Kinzu a little shyly, his eyes full of desire. No problem, I'll take you for a ride later. Smiling, he touched the guy's head. It turned out that it was just a ride, so Kinzu agreed without hesitation. Hi, Clean, long time no see. Mobuka, who was standing behind little Jack, looked at Kinzu with a smile on her face, and her words seemed to be pointed. Looking at Mobuka in front of him, Kinzu felt amazed. The simple black and white striped shirt seemed unable to cover the plumpness, and under the ultra-short denim shorts, it was a pair of white and perfect, slender white legs. A head of soft golden hair, casually draped on both sides of the shoulders, that delicate face, as if it was the most perfect work of God, so white, so moving. Kinzu turned his head and saw that little Jack had already run into the villa, so he stopped suppressing his restlessness and went straight forward to hold Mobuka's slender waist, lowered his head and kissed her. Woo, Mobuka only had time to make a faint whimper before she quickly collapsed. This bad guy still did whatever he wanted. However, the heart in her chest began to beat faster. You know, her brother was right in front of her. If he suddenly came out and saw the state of the two, she really couldn't explain it clearly. Thinking of the last time she had spent a lot of effort to make her parents believe that Kinzu was just sending her back on the way, if her brother saw it this time, wouldn't all her efforts be wasted? Thinking of this, Mobuka's struggle began to grow stronger again. But even so, it took nearly 5 minutes before Kinzu let her go. Who? Clean, Kinzu, you bad guy, if my brother sees you, let's see what you'll do. After leaving Kinzu's arms, Mobuka took a few deep breaths to calm her restless heart. If he sees it, I couldn't go to your house to propose marriage. Holding Mobuka's little hand, Kinzu said nonchalantly, and at the same time quietly added in his heart, just a concubine. Humph, don't think I don't know, you just sent your real girlfriend away. Glancing at this guy, Mobuka's heart was full of resentment. Okay, I know you have a girlfriend, but you don't wait for my parents to know, now it's okay? I don't dare to admit our relationship. Ahem, well, baby, let's go see how to build a fish tank. After coughing twice in embarrassment, Kinzu quickly changed the subject. Sure enough, there may be women in the world who don't eat, but there are really no women who don't get jealous. HMPH, I don't care about you. Mobuka snorted helplessly. In fact, she was just complaining about being questioned by her parents. After all, she had cheated a long time ago, and she couldn't say that others were not. Entering the villa, little Jack was teasing little Jerry, and it seemed that the two little guys got along well. Clean, is this your pet? It's really beautiful. What's its name? Yes, it's a North American red squirrel. It's called Little Jerry. If you don't believe me, call it and see. Walking to the sofa and sitting down, Kinzu turned his head to look at little Jack, smiling and encouraging. Little Jerry, Little Jerry. After calling twice tentatively, the little squirrel really responded, shaking the fluffy tail behind it, looking at little Jack eagerly, thinking that there was something delicious. You food it, come, Jack, take it, you need this. As he said, Kinzu took a few blueberries from the fruit plate and threw them to little Jack. Sure enough, after having blueberry, The relationship between the two brothers, Little Jerry and Little Jack, seemed to have become better. Hey, are you still going to take a look? Picking up the scattered documents on the table, Mobika glanced at this guy helplessly. He was just looking at a document, but his hands were so dishonest. Ahem, look. Kinzu coughed twice and retracted his salty pig hand. He didn't know what was wrong with him recently. He was particularly fond of daydreaming. Is he in heat? Look here, just open a tributary from this mountain stream, pass here, and the last half passes under the villa, and then behind it. If you build a few more buildings like your Chinese ones, it would be the best. Opening a small hand-painted map, Mobika pointed on it and explained his designs to Kinzu one by one. Especially at the end, he looked at Kinzu with an envious look, as if he was very envious of the Chinese culture. Thanks to Fengxi for the reward and support. Chapter 288 Ancient Buildings. What building? Kinzu didn't react for a moment, and looked up at Mobika in confusion. There are so many buildings in China, who knows which one you are talking about? This is it, look. Reaching out and taking out a tablet from the backpack next to him, Mobika opened it and smiled and pointed at several photos inside. Leaning over to take a look, Kinzu suddenly realized that it was them. Mobika showed him several renderings she made on the computer, and the buildings in the pictures were small bridges and flowing water with Chinese characteristics, as well as the kind of ancient buildings with dragons and phoenixes. However, why did Kinzu think that they looked like buildings in the Forbidden City? Looking at Mobika in confusion, Kinzu asked curiously, "Baby, where did you find these pictures?" "It's on the internet, the palace where the emperor lives. This is my favorite style. If I can go to the scene to see it someday, I will be satisfied." Raising her beautiful eyes, Mobika said with longing. "Well, yes, this kind of building is indeed suitable for your design, but, can anyone build this kind of building?" After listening to Mobika, Kinzu nodded in relief. No wonder he felt familiar with it. Kinzu was of course very satisfied that his country's architecture could be so highly praised by a foreign girl. However, can anyone in the United States build such an ancient Chinese-style building? There should be. After hearing what Kinzu said, Mobika was suddenly a little confused. She subconsciously raised her white and tender little hand and scratched her golden hair. At this time, she seemed to react. She only cared about her own likes. Whether there was anyone who could build this kind of building and where to buy the materials was really a problem. Forget it, I'll call aunts. Seeing her embarrassed look but not wanting to change the design, Kinzu smiled and took out his mobile phone. At worst, he could find a construction team from China. Anyway, he had money. At this time, aunts, who had just returned to New York, stood at the door of his house and looked at the phone in a daze. Sure enough, the phone call came. Although he wanted to hang up the phone, the person on the other end was the company's financial sponsor, and he couldn't afford to offend him. After hesitating for a long time, when the phone was about to hang up, Aunt finally picked up the phone. Kinzu waited for a long time, but no one answered the phone. Just when he was about to hang up, he heard a slightly tired voice coming from the phone. "Hello, is this Mr. Clean?" "Hi, it's me, Aunt. Are you busy now?" Although Kinzu was a little dissatisfied with him answering the phone so late, he still greeted him enthusiastically. He didn't know how terrifying he was to Aunt now. Even if he had money, he wouldn't play with people like this. "Hello, Mr. Clean, just tell me what you want." Although he said so, Aunt was complaining in his heart at this moment. Oh my god, it's the same thing again. Every time he gets home, the money sponsor calls him. Is this a waste of time? You know, he hasn't been intimate with his wife for a long time. However, his god didn't seem to pay attention to him. He just heard Kinzu on the other side continue. "Well, then I'll tell you directly. I'm going to build a freshwater river in my manor and build some buildings with Chinese characteristics on it. Can you build them there?" "Chinese characteristics? What do you mean?" Although he wanted to refuse outright, if his boss knew that he refused the business that came to his door, he would probably pack up and leave. "Do you know the Forbidden City? There are pictures on the internet. You can search for it. It's an ancient building similar to that." Browsing Mobika's tablet, Kinzu was looking at the rest of her renderings at the moment. "It's really well done. A building like the Forbidden City. I'm sorry, Mr. Clean, our company can't build this kind of building. Because this kind of building not only needs to import materials, but also has too small an audience in the United States." After hearing Kinzu's story, Aunt refused without even looking at it. At the same time, he breathed a sigh of relief in his heart. He couldn't be blamed for this, because the company really didn't do this kind of business. After hanging up the phone, Kinzu was a little stunned. Just now, he seemed to hear a hint of relief in Om's tone. Fortunately. She felt fortunate that the sound didn't work. What the hell is this? Clean, how is it? Can it be done? Seeing Kinzu still in a daze after hanging up the phone, Mobica on the side quickly came up, feeling a little uneasy. It took me a month or two to finally make a design for the rendering. Would it die just like that? They really can't do it. Kinzu shook his head slowly in Mobica's eager eyes. This was completely different from doing construction. There were very few people who could do this in the United States. What should I do? Am I working for nothing for the past month? Mobica collapsed on the sofa with a dejected look. She had no strength left. She had finally made a rendering. Was it going to fail? Don't worry, baby. I'm thinking of a way. I'm sure I can solve this problem. At worst, I can go back and get someone to come. Reaching out and gently patting her little head lying on the sofa, Kinzu patted his chest and promised. Baby, don't worry. Let's discuss the river first. As for the construction, leave it to me. Really? Can you handle it? Hearing what Kinzu said, Mobica sat up suddenly, which scared Eva, who was serving coffee next to her. After taking the coffee, Mobica smiled and said thank you. She and Eva have known each other for almost 2 years. However, now is not the time to reminisce about the past. Mobica is looking at Kinzu with some excitement at this moment. Could it be that he really has the ability to clone himself? Of course, you should believe me. After patting his chest and making a promise, Kinzu looked at the rendering in his hand and asked, Baby, what do you think of this freshwater river? Freshwater river? The total width of the water surface I designed is about 20 meters, the depth is 3 meters, and the total length seems to be a little more than 5 kilometers. The measurement at the time was not particularly accurate. That's about it. As he said, Mobica picked up the pen and pointed at the hand-painted small map of the ranch, with the heroic look of an ancient general pointing at the mountains and rivers. Following Mobica's instructions, Kinzu fumbled on the hand-painted small map for a long time, and finally sorted out his thoughts. In front of him, a sparkling river seemed to be about to break out of the ground. Thank you Langzi for the 500 starting coins reward, thank you. Chapter 289 Diary of 1860 Gulp. After reading Mobica's design, Kinzu swallowed his saliva involuntarily, and felt his throat was still a little dry. Well, baby, let's build a freshwater river. It doesn't need to be that wide, right? And, isn't it a bit deep? 20 meters wide? 3 meters deep? Are you sure you were only designing an artificial river? Just want to bring a branch over. 20 meters is very wide. The river next to my house seems to be 50 or 60 meters wide. Blinking her lovely light blue eyes, Mobica's mouth corners couldn't help but curl up into a charming arc. I told you that the design is very luxurious, and this is just the basics. Kinzu had the urge to vomit blood when listening to it. Sister, Lake Charles is near your home, okay? Although it does not belong to the 5 Great Lakes of North America, it is also one of the best freshwater rivers in Massachusetts. You compare a small river on my ranch with a river in the state, why don't you go to heaven? Ahem, baby, let's not talk about this for now. What does it mean to use bluestone to pave the riverbed on both sides? Kinzu felt that if he continued to talk, he didn't know what this girl would say, so he simply continued to look down. Well, look at the river area in Boston, isn't it all paved with stones? We can use bluestone slabs, which will also match the ancient Chinese-style buildings better. Mobica raised his eyebrows proudly, looked at Kinzu who was speechless, and continued. I have checked the information about these, and this is what the internet says. All paved with bluestone? Kinzu was stunned, looking at Mobica who was talking across from him. For the first time in his life, he realized what a luxurious version of the fish tank was. Are you sure? He thought it was just using an excavator to push out a river channel, and at most he could just use cement or something to build it near the villa. You still need bluestone slabs. Kinzu took a few big gulps from the cup beside him, but his throat was still dry. He had to admit that he was moved by the scenery described by Mobica. Think of the small bridges and flowing water, bluestone paving, and some colorful koi and ornamental fish in the water. Damn, isn't it just money? At most, I will go to the sea a few more times. With a wave of his hand, Kinzu interrupted Mobuka, who was talking eloquently. He was afraid that if he continued to listen, he would not be able to make up his mind. Since he had decided to build it, Kinzu did not drag his feet, so he decisively took his mobile phone from the side and dialed a number directly. "Hello, Jennifer. Yes, it's me. Can you help me contact a company that can build ancient Chinese buildings?" "That's right. If you don't use your rights, they will expire." Kinzu directly called the 24-hour full-time secretary assigned to him by American Express. "Mr. Clean, are you talking about the ancient Chinese-style buildings?" There was a crackling sound of typing from the phone, and then Jennifer's slightly surprised voice came through the microphone. After Kinzu confirmed, there was silence for nearly a minute. Jennifer's slightly apologetic voice reported the name and phone number of a company to Kinzu, and asked Kinzu when he needed it. After hanging up the phone, Kinzu smiled bigly. It seems that today's incident really stumped the customer service of the Centurion Black Gold Card, which is known to be omnipotent. Yes, in the United States, building a house is not something that can be built at will. Even if it is your own land, it still needs to be approved. Moreover, in the eyes of the Americans, this kind of Chinese-style building belongs to the kind of ornamental garden-style building. Ordinary people naturally will not build such a thing at home. Therefore, correspondingly, there are naturally fewer companies that can build such buildings. Being able to find one in Boston, I have to admire the ability of the Centurion Black Gold Card of American Express. Clean, have you found someone who can build it? You don't really want to build it according to this, do you? Mobuka raised her pretty face full of astonishment, with deep surprise in her tone. She had introduced it for so long, but she didn't expect Kinzu to build it according to this design. After all, she said at the beginning that her design was a very luxurious type. Well, they should be able to build it. As for this design, I think some places need to be changed. Although he liked this design very much, the 20-meter river width was really a bit tricky. How could he need such a wide river? After signaling Mobuka to change this, Kinzu called the number of the Link Construction Company again. To Kinzu's surprise, the person who answered the phone was actually a nice female voice speaking fluent Mandarin. After hearing Kinzu's intention, the customer service of Link Construction was obviously a little surprised, but if this was true, it would be a big order. So the customer service girl politely said that the company could send someone over and they would talk about it when they met. After making an appointment with the customer service girl, Kinzu hung up the phone reluctantly. Not to mention, the girl's sweet voice sounded really good. As soon as he hung up the phone, Mobuka gave him a kiss and said excitedly, "Clean, you are so great, I love you to death. Come on, you should quickly modify the design drawing, and remember to modify the items I pointed out." Kinzu rolled his eyes helplessly and sighed in his heart, this is really a child. It's true, Kinzu only realized at this time that Mobuka seemed to be much younger than him. Is he an old cow eating young grass? Oh, by the way, baby, how were you studying the contents of the notebook? Sitting on the sofa and flipping through the design drawings, Kinzu suddenly thought of the ancient notebook, so he asked casually. He was quite interested in this kind of adventure. After hesitating for a while, Mobuka didn't know whether she should tell Kinzu about this. After all, this was not a glorious thing. If Kinzu hadn't asked, she really didn't want to tell Kinzu. But now that Kinzu asked, it would be unreasonable not to tell him. Well, this is indeed a diary written by a naval officer, and the time is not 1910, but around 1986. Mobuka looked at Kinzu's face carefully, and her voice was a little low. 1860. Kinzu came back to his senses from the design drawing after hearing Mobuka's voice. His heart suddenly jumped for no reason, as if something very important was about to happen. Yes, 1860. Mobuka nodded affirmatively, and a trace of guilt suddenly appeared on her face. Thanks to Fengxil Love and Peace for their support. Chapter 290. The Sunken Ironclad. Oh? What does it say? Kinzu asked casually on a sofa. This special year obviously did not bring him any special associations. After looking up slightly at Mobuka across from him, Kinzu continued to look down and looked at the exquisite panoramic design in his hand. It seemed as if there was a peerless beauty hidden in it, which made people never tired of looking at it. That naval officer, called Anthony Kipling, is the captain of a monitor ironclad ship. Mobuka across from him lowered his head and dared not look directly at Kinzu. His voice seemed a little hesitant. I don't know what she was thinking. What? The captain of the monitor ironclad ship? That's a big official, right? How could he be there? Looking up with some surprise, looking at Mobica across from him, Kinzu was a little curious. The Monitor ironclad ship, that was the strongest war weapon at the time, right? However, Kinzu scratched his head in confusion. It stands to reason that the captain of the USS Monitor cannot be an unknown person, right? Why haven't we heard of this incident in history? Yes, he was the captain of USS Monitor ironclad ship. However, when the ironclad ship was returning to the United States, it encountered a strong typhoon in the Atlantic Ocean and unfortunately ran aground and sank. Recalling the slightly sloppy handwriting on the last 2 pages of the notebook, Mobica could easily imagine the despair of the ironclad captain named Anthony Kipling at the time. The USS Monitor sank? How is it possible? I haven't heard of it. Now, Kinzu could no longer continue to look at the beautiful panoramic view. He looked up at Mobica with a look of astonishment. Are you sure you are not kidding? What is the USS Monitor ironclad ship? That was an ironclad ship that represented invincibility at the time. It could be sunk by a strong typhoon. As for the reef, what a joke. Let's not talk about the sonar on the cruiser. Even if it really hit a reef, that big guy with thick skin and flesh wouldn't sink, right? This. Mobica hesitated, not knowing what to say. In fact, the reason why no one knew that the Monitor ironclad sank was because the reason for the sinking was a bit embarrassing. Moreover, the Monitor ironclad was ordered by the United States Federation at the time and was a secret operation, so it is still unknown to outsiders. What's wrong? How did it sink? Mobica's words aroused Kinzu's curiosity again, so he couldn't wait to ask. Well, because the ship was full of treasures looted from China, it was a little overweight and failed to avoid the reef in time. It sank an hour after it hit the reef. Mobica lowered her head and her voice was as soft as a mosquito. Indeed, it was embarrassing for her to tell her lover about the atrocities her country had committed against her lover's motherland. 1860. Treasures looted from China. Are you sure? Looking at Mobica in astonishment, Kinzu stood up suddenly. Are you sure you are not mistaken? Why is what happened today so strange? In 1860, the United States invaded China. Are you kidding? If I remember correctly, 1860 should be the time of the Second Opium War, right? Wasn't that a good thing done by the 2 bastards of Britain and France? How is it related to the United States? I don't know either, that's what's written in the diary. Mobica looked at Kinzu timidly. She didn't know much about history, she just read what was written in the diary. Baby, what treasures are in there? Where did they come from? Does the diary say that? Patting Mobica's shoulder as if to comfort her, Kinzu signaled her to relax a little. This thing that happened a long time ago had nothing to do with her. It seems to be something from some garden, all gold, jade, and jadeite. Recalling the translated content in her mind, she said with some uncertainty. What garden? 1860. Garden. Old Summer Palace. While muttering in her mouth, Kinzu's slightly confused eyes seemed to have seen the most incredible thing in the world, and they opened wider and wider. Almost subconsciously, Kinzu stood up suddenly, his eyes full of incredulity, staring closely at Mobica beside him, as if he wanted to confirm the truth of this matter from her beautiful face like a flower. Kinzu, what's wrong with you? Are you okay? Stared at by Kinzu's sharp eyes, Mobica, who was sitting on the sofa opposite him, couldn't help but stand up and looked at him with concern. It's okay, I just feel a little confused. Waving his hand, Kinzu sat back on the sofa. From Mobica's sincere eyes, he had already got the answer he wanted. But, how could this be? Kinzu's mind was full of incredible and shocking. How could the American battleship be loaded with all these things? Weren't there only those 2 countries involved in the looting at the beginning? Could it be? They also participated at the beginning. These are benefits. The more Kinzu thought about it, the more he felt that it was possible. It must be like this. It was not surprising, there were only 2 countries at the beginning, and they dared to challenge the Celestial Empire, which still had its residual power. After all, a lean camel is bigger than a horse. Without anyone's support behind them, Liang and the others dared not act rashly. Moreover, no wonder they set fire to the old summer palace afterwards, resulting in the loss of many precious jades and antiques, which have not been counted until now. It turns out that the root of the matter is here. After thinking for a while, Kinzu felt that his head was a little big, so he simply stopped thinking about it. This kind of guessing is what he hates the most. baby, does the diary record the place where the battleship sank? And how did he escape? Staring at Mobica, who sat down again opposite, Kinzu began to continue asking questions. According to his observation, someone should have lived there for a period of time. This means that this unlucky guy escaped by himself, instead of being washed in by the waves. It's not written much about this. It seems that he was nearby when he woke up. At the time, this place was still a primeval forest. He tried to walk through it several times, but couldn't get out. In the end, he just found a cave and lived there, hoping that fishermen who went out to sea would meet him by chance. As he spoke, Mobica took a sip of coffee to moisten his throat, which was a little dry because of talking too much. What about the location of the shipwreck? Has anyone been brought up? There must be a lot of good stuff on that ship, right? Hundreds of millions of dollars may not be enough to buy these. At the end of his voice, Kinzu emphasized his tone. He knew what the most precious shipwreck treasure in the sea would be. It's not the tons of gold and silver coins, nor the arms business that's at risk of one's life, but the ancient Chinese porcelain that will break if touched. It seems that only the approximate location is given, which is near a small island near the Pacific Ocean. Although he didn't know why Kinzu asked this, Mobica still told him everything he knew. Chapter 291. Kinzu's thoughts. Is that so? Touching his bald chin, Kinzu changed to a comfortable position on the brown leather sofa, and thought for a long time. He continued to ask, did he record the approximate location? For example, how far is it from the destination? Kinzu was really unwilling to give up. This is a treasure ship that no one else knows about. If it can make an ironclad ship overweight, how many treasures are there? Not to mention how much these things are worth. Just the fact that they're antique jades from China makes Kinzu's mood surge involuntarily. If this sunken ship is found, what is the point of raising capital? It seems to be about 500 nautical miles away. According to the diary, there is still about 500 nautical miles to go before reaching New York. As soon as the voice fell, Mobica seemed to realize Kinzu's purpose, and couldn't help but cover her pink cherry mouth with her white and tender little hand, looking at Kinzu with surprise. You don't want to salvage this ironclad ship? Why not? Kinzu asked back with a smile. Well, but at least we know the approximate location. Mobica was a little helpless. Yes, why not? That's a lot of wealth. But it seems to require a lot of luck. Just try it. Besides, I didn't say I must go find it. Shrugging helplessly, Kinzu felt that it was better to consider this matter in the long run, so he looked at Mobica, who was a little confused opposite with a serious face, and continued. By the way, baby, this matter is of great importance, you can't tell anyone. Yeah, don't worry, Clean, I will never tell anyone, including on it. Mobica, who came back to her senses from the surprise, raised her white and tender little fist, with a solemn look. Even on it, her best friend and lover, was taken out by her. Hey, Clean, excuse me, can I take Jerry out to play? Perhaps because he had been ignored by the two for too long, little Jack came over with the red squirrel in his arms, looking forward to asking this playmate to accompany him out for a stroll. Of course, no problem, but you have to be careful, don't fall. Kinzu smiled and touched Jack's little head, and said with concern. I know, and, Clean, you can't touch your man's head casually, I forgive you this time. As he said that, he hugged little Jerry and ran out of the villa, leaving Kinzu stunned on the spot. Ha, Clean, now you know, right? Looking at Kinzu's stunned look, Mobica laughed happily beside him, just like a fox who stole a chicken. Obviously, this was not the first time she saw her brother doing this. This little guy is not very old, but he is quite particular. Touching his nose helplessly, Kinzu had to change the subject. Let's go out for a walk together. It's boring to stay in the house all the time. When Kinzu arrived at the door, he found that little Jack was playing happily with the North American red squirrel on the rockery. It was obviously the first time he met such a smart little guy. The two of them walked in the pasture and walked towards the stable. Mobica was still thinking about her own horse. Oh my god. Clean, how did you do it? It seems to have grown stronger. Come on, let's take a walk together. Kinzu did not answer her question. He released Xiaobai from the stable and let Mobica go up first. Xiaobai, this guy, obviously still knew his former owner. He rubbed his big horse head in Mobica's arms affectionately, which made Kinzu's eyes blatant. Okay. You perverted horse, you dare to take advantage so blatantly, believe it or not, I will beat you to death. Why is my horse not as domineering as in the novel? Others don't let anyone ride it except the owner, so why is it that when it comes to me, it allows people to ride it just by feeding it something? Although he was thinking, Kinzu's actions were not slow. He turned over and got on Xiaobai. Hey, Clean, why is it all bare here? Have you replanted it? What do the cows eat? After riding the horse for a while, Mobica looked at the endless black land and was a little dazed. No, there is still a large area left over there, which is enough for the cows to eat for the time being. Ah. Don't be like that, Clean, we are still outside, and it's noon. Chatting and laughing, the two passed by the dock, where construction is already started. Just yesterday, Kinzu and Stanley officially signed that contract for the construction of the dock under the witness of 2 lawyers. Moreover, the initial budget of 1 million has been transferred to Stanley, which made this guy very happy, as if he had won the jackpot by luck. It is really hard to find customers who pay so quickly now. Hi, boss, good morning. Will greeted Kinzu from a distance. He was now responsible for supervising the progress of the dock construction. Kinzu waved his hand and sent the other fishermen to work as cowboys. They were idle anyway. However, after hearing Will's words, Kinzu subconsciously looked up at the sky. It seemed that it was almost noon. Good morning, Will. Have the fishing boats been delivered to the Boston dock? Looking at the empty sea, Kinzu still greeted him and asked with a smile. Yes, and, boss, those boats have also arrived, so I sent them over together. After greeting Mobica with a smile, Will looked at the two people hugging each other with an ambiguous look in his eyes. While he was happy for Mobica, he also felt a little sorry that Eva could not hug this big tree. Thanks to Fengxian for the tips. To be honest, I still had to ask others for help before I knew how to pronounce. Chapter 292 Lin Yu. What? They sent it at this time? Kinzu's tone was slightly dissatisfied. What's the point of the plane? They were so happy when buying fishing boats, but they were so slow in sending a few boats. No, boss, they sent all the boats that were sent by new ones, so it took some time. Will looked at the slightly angry Kinzu in front of him, and explained for them with a wry smile. He was helpless in his heart. It was good enough that they were willing to send a few boats when buying a fishing boat. It was just a few days late, and there was no rush to use it anyway. Nodding, Kinzu was relieved, and couldn't help but feel a little funny about his own narrow-mindedness. How is their progress? Looking up at the slightly busy construction site in the distance, Kinzu felt indescribably proud in his heart. It was his own deep-water dock. In the past, this was something he dared not even think about. The progress is very good. We will probably be able to dismantle the dock today, and then we will start transporting gravel to fill it in tomorrow or the day after tomorrow. Will, who was standing by, also followed Kinzu's gaze and looked at the construction site in the distance that was crowded with large trucks. Those large trucks full of things were all pulling some construction materials. After they unloaded the things on the trucks, they also transported the construction waste here. Hi, Mr. Clean, hello. Stanley saw Kinzu from a distance and hurried over to say hello. He was now assigned here by the company to supervise the construction of this dock. It can be imagined how much the company attaches importance to this place. This also indirectly proves that Kinzu, a nation, must have a special weight in the boss's heart. Well, Mr. Stanley, this dock, please trouble you. After getting off the horse with Mobica, Kinzu smiled and shook hands with Stanley, who came forward, and then visited the busy construction site under his leadership. After a rough walk, Kinzu really didn't have much interest in this place, so he said goodbye to the two and walked towards the villa not far away. In fact, the most important thing is that he can't understand it at all, so why bother to read it? Just pretend, anyway, with Will watching, I believe it won't be a big deal. As for Mobica, I don't know if it was because of the notebook or because she was stunned by Kinzu's generosity. Anyway, she didn't say much until the representative of Lin's construction called. Hello, Mr. Clean, it's an honor to meet you. At around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, a red Mercedes-Benz S-Series car slowly stopped at the door of the villa. A graceful young woman pushed open the car door and walked down, smiling and greeting Kinzu. When Kinzu saw this woman, he was a little speechless. This is a very beautiful Oriental beauty, about 23 or 24 years old, wearing a light pink professional suit, with black and shiny hair casually scattered behind her head. The delicate facial features were matched just right, and the fair face was also showing a healthy pink color, as if it would be squeezed and water would come out. On the pair of beautiful legs, there was a pair of flesh-colored transparent crystal stockings, which showed the jade-like calves of the young beauty in front of him to the fullest. The most important thing was that on the delicate little nose, there was a pair of black glasses frames that looked very high-end and atmospheric. When Qin saw it, he immediately shouted in his heart, "Black silk glasses girl." Well, Qin glanced at the flesh-colored crystal stockings and felt a little sorry. It was just a glasses girl. "Hello, Miss Lin, you are too polite. I'm really honored that you can come here in person." Finally, when this young oriental beauty got out of the car and walked in front of Qin, he came back to his senses from that fantasy. Smiling and extending his hand, Qin and the young master of Lin's construction in front of him shook hands very politely, saying polite words that made him a little uncomfortable. Although he was reluctant, Qin was still relaxed. No matter how beautiful the woman in front of him was, he couldn't lose face as a man. He wasn't the kind of person who couldn't walk when he saw a beautiful woman. "Miss Lin, please come in. Let's talk inside." After the two of them exchanged greetings for a while, Qin invited her to come in and talk. Speaking of which, Qin was also very surprised. When he called in the morning, it was obviously a man, but the call just now is from this woman named Lin Yu. And according to her own introduction, she was the chief designer of the temporary architectural design department. However, Qin called Jennifer and asked Jennifer. This woman named Lin Yu was the youngest daughter of Lin Dong, the chairman of Lin's construction. But what Qin didn't expect was that this woman was so beautiful. After entering the room, Qin introduced Mobika and Lin Yu to each other. Mobika also stood up politely and shook hands with this beautiful representative. However, the look in this girl's eyes when she looked at Qin was a little wrong. Finding a construction company can find a beautiful woman. Are you sure you didn't mean it? Facing Mobika's teasing eyes, Qin could only shake his head helplessly and smile bigly. This was really not his intention. "Mr. Qin, can you tell me your requirements?" As soon as the few people sat down, Lin Yu took a folder from a little assistant who followed beside her, opened it and smiled at the two people opposite. Qin was slightly stunned. This woman's work attitude was very serious. It seemed that she really sat in this position by her ability. So Qin didn't say anything more, and directly took Mobika's design drawings and began to tell her about his requirements, while Mobika also supplemented at any time. After Qin finished speaking, Lin Yu's beautiful eyebrows on the opposite side frowned a little. After thinking for a while, he said, "Mr. Qin, there is no problem with this river channel. We can also find bluestone, but the glazed tiles needed for these pavilions need to be shipped from China. At this price." At this point, Lin Yu stopped and looked at Qin a little embarrassed. Although she didn't continue, Qin understood what she meant. He smiled indifferently and said, "Don't worry, Miss Lin. As long as the price is not too outrageous and the building meets my requirements, money is not a problem." Although Qin's voice was not loud, the confidence in his tone made Mobika, who was sitting next to him, tremble slightly. From ancient times to the present, beauties have always been dependent on the strong, and in today's society, having money means being strong. Although it is vulgar to say this, a rich man can indeed make a woman's heart beat, especially when the man is a little handsome. Thank you Langzi for the 500 starting points reward. Thank you. Chapter 293 Mobika's Thriller. Haha, then I'm relieved. Let's go back and calculate it, and then give you a quote. What do you think? Looking at the man across from her, who decided to spend millions with a wave of his hand, Lin Yu was a little distracted. You know, her family is considered to have some assets, but compared with the man in front of her, her family seems to be in a state of poor peasants. And the reason why she came here in person today was because she received a call from American Express and learned that there was a client with a Centurion black gold card who wanted to build some ancient buildings. As the chief designer of Lin's architectural design department and proficient in the design of ancient Chinese buildings, she came here on behalf of the company as a matter of course. But I didn't expect that the owner of this legendary Centurion black gold card was so young. Looking at him, he seemed to be about the same age as me, right? Well, but let's start the work as soon as possible. Nodding, Qin said that it was no problem. He mainly wanted to start the work as soon as possible. Since the matter was discussed, Lin Yu didn't say much and got up and said goodbye directly. She was not the kind of person who would talk business, and the reason why she came without a sales representative this time was mainly to make personal connections. Although making money is important, it is not important compared to being able to get to know a black gold card owner. Qin stood up and sent a few people out the door. Watching the red Mercedes-Benz gradually disappearing from the back, Kinzu smiled bitterly with some helplessness. Well, this woman is too resolute. From entering the door to finishing the business, it only took a few minutes in total. Even the coffee was not ready, and she left. Okay, don't look at it. Everyone has gone far away. Just as Kinzu was helplessly smiling bitterly, Mobuka's teasing voice beside him made him want to cry without tears. Well, I just sighed that the girl was resolute. What did you think? Kinzu turned around helplessly and looked at Mobuka, who was pouting behind him. He felt that his worldview was a little wrong. Aren't European and American women very open? And they know how to be jealous. Okay, we finished talking about this, and I should go back to. Shrugging her shoulders, Mobuka crossed her arms in front of her chest, with an expression that had nothing to do with me, which made Kinzu's mouth twitch a little. But looking at the time, it was indeed late. The brother and sister had been here all day today. If they didn't go back, Joseph would probably come to the door. Hey, where's Jack? Turning his head and looking around, Kinzu realized that he seemed to have not seen the little guy for a while. Is he outside? At this time, Mobuka also remembered that she came here with her brother today. She spent the whole afternoon with this guy and didn't notice where her brother ran away. She couldn't care about teasing Kinzu anymore, and quickly walked around the villa and started looking. Jack. Where are you? Sister, I'm here. Fortunately, after just calling twice, she heard Jack's crisp childish voice. When Mobuka turned around the villa, she saw Jack playing with the little squirrel on the green steps at the back. However, what made her feel a bit scared was that next to Jack, there was actually a golden python that was 6 or 7 meters long. Ah! Jack, run! Run! Mobuka, whose legs and feet were weak from fear, yelled out at the top of her lungs in a moment of desperation. It was as if the giant python would devour the small figure in the next moment. Hey, sister, come and see, this big guy is really fun. When Jack heard his sister shout, he not only did not run, but in the face of Mobuka's horrified eyes, he used his delicate little hands to pat the golden python next to him, which was quietly circling. No, stop it, come back. Clean, save him, quickly. Mobuka, who was a little unsteady from fear, turned her head to look at Kinzu, who was running over, and begged with a crying voice. Baby, be good, it's okay, that's my pet, it won't hurt anyone. Don't cry. Kinzu waved at the guy in the distance, and quickly supported the shaky Mobuka, comforting him softly. What? Mobuka's voice was a little choked, and she raised her head and looked at Kinzu with a look like a fool. It's time now, and you are still joking. Look for yourself. Kinzu didn't explain much, but just pointed his mouth towards that side. Following the direction Kinzu pointed, Mobuka turned her head and looked over. As a result, she found that the golden giant python had actually moved dozens of meters to the side. Mobuka even saw a few traces of grievance in the giant python's eyes. It was as if complaining, I didn't do anything, why is it always my fault? What's going on? Mobuka broke free from Kinzu's support and grabbed the long golden hair with both hands. She was about to continue asking questions, but she saw Jack trying to chase the giant python from the corner of her eyes. She was so scared that she ran over quickly. Jack, stop right there. Don't go over there. When she ran to Jack's side, Mobuka couldn't help but slapped him on the butt a few times. Sister, why did you hit me? I want to play with it. As he said that, Jack pointed at the golden giant python hovering on the side, and he looked very happy. Are you crazy? That's a python, it will eat people. Mobuka grabbed her hair helplessly. She was very upset now. What was going on? Turning her head to look at the giant python beside Kinzu in the distance, Mobuka's heart was broken. How could there be such a big guy in a good ranch? Isn't Kinzu afraid of getting into trouble? It seems that not everyone likes animals like pythons. Especially girls, they are still a little scared of cold-blooded animals like pythons. Okay, baby, don't be afraid, this guy is very docile and won't hurt anyone. After comforting the aggrieved python, Kinzu walked over embarrassedly. He didn't expect Jack to run to the back of the villa. After all, the giant python is not a complete marine creature. It still likes to bask in the sun behind that villa every day. It happened to be seen by Jack. Clean, why do you keep such a big guy? What if it hurts someone accidentally? Mobuka was obviously still a little bit unacceptable. She didn't even dare to look at the golden python next to it, which looked extremely ferocious. Baby, don't worry, you can see it too, this guy is very docile. Kinzu had no choice but to wave at the giant python again, so the big guy who had just coiled up and was about to rest for a while had to twist his thick body helplessly and slowly swam over again. Thanks to Langzi and Fengzi for their rewards and support. Thank you. CS Escuchando Westa Novela on Canal Distinta Mundo Fanfic Novelas, Significat lo Descarga and y Subiran Sinisfuerzos Invitamos Cordialmente Visitar Nuestro Canal. Mundo Fanfic Novelas all encontras la versión original de esta historia y podrás explorar muchas otras novelas de diversos narradores. Te esperamos para sumergirte en un mundo de novelas incredibles. Chapter 294 Rumors. Come here. Look, how well behaved it is. Kinzu stroked the giant python with its head lowered, and comforted the frightened Mobica like coaxing a child. Although Kinzu was talking eloquently, Mobica was still a little frightened by this big guy who obviously looked very ferocious. Quietly moving back a few steps, Mobica shook her small head full of blonde hair and said in a trembling voice, "Clean, let her go quickly, I'm scared." Kinzu was also a little helpless when he saw this, so he had to take the frightened Mobica and the reluctant Jack back to the villa. "Clean, you keep such a big guy in the manor, aren't you afraid of scaring the cowboys?" After sitting on the sofa, Mobica took a big sip of the cold coffee, and complained to Kinzu. Obviously, she had not recovered from the shock. "Hey, sister, that big guy is really well behaved. I touched it, but it didn't move." "Shut up, I'm not talking to you." Mobica looked at Jack, who was shaking his two short legs on the sofa next to him, with some anger, and his tone was full of murderous intent. "I have lost so much face today, I will settle the score with you when I go back." Little Jack on the sofa shrugged helplessly, looking at Kinzu with a helpless look. "Clean, it's not that I don't help you, I guess my poor little butt will be in trouble when I go back, you can only wish you good luck." "Ahem, baby, listen to me." Kinzu, with a helpless face, rolled his eyes at the dishonest little guy next to him, and explained the whole thing to Mobica with a bitter smile. Of course, he didn't say much about how to keep the giant python as a pet, but just explained that it was a kind of animal taming technique passed down in the family. However, even so, the thrilling short journey also made Mobica's face dull. Especially when she heard that Kinzu was swept away by the giant python. Even though she was looking at the living Kinzu in front of her, Mobica couldn't help but cover her mouth with her white hands, her face full of worry. When she heard about Kinzu's final experience, she couldn't help but be surprised, and even the matter of the giant python just now was temporarily forgotten by her. "Oh my god, you mean, the notebook was found in a cave in the Appalachian Mountains? And there is a body?" Looking at Kinzu with a face full of surprise, Mobica was no longer worried about Kinzu's safety at this moment, but concerned about his experience in the cave. Obviously, this was similar to the bloody content of an adventure novel, which could attract her more attention. Looking at Mobica's performance, Kinzu almost wanted to vomit blood in his heart. Sure enough, women are very curious creatures, and they don't even worry about their own safety. Of course, that nest is the guy's lair. I found a body in it, and the notebook next to it. Although he had the urge to vomit blood, Kinzu still forced himself to explain to him after hearing Mobica's question. "Then the police didn't find this notebook?" Looking at Kinzu with disbelief, Mobica didn't believe that they would make such a mistake after dispatching the special forces. "Hehe, I was curious about the contents inside, so I hid it secretly." Kinzu was obviously very proud of being able to take away this notebook with so many good things under the noses of the American police, and couldn't help but laugh a few times. "Okay, but what are you going to do now? Since the police took away the remains, they should know that this guy is the captain of the ironclad ship. When they come to find you, what will you say?" Compared with Kinzu's optimistic attitude, Mobica seemed a little worried. She was still very confident in her country's scientific research technology. So what if they know? They don't know the existence of the notebook? Even if they know the existence of the notebook, what can they do? Let's not talk about the place where the ship sank, it may be the high seas. Even if it sank in the territorial waters of the United States, it is still our Chinese treasure. Kinzu's voice was a little excited at the end. Thinking of the essence of his nation being transported back by these barbarians, Kinzu felt unhappy. Okay, Clean, don't be excited. Let's talk about what you were going to do with that big guy, right? Seeing that Kinzu was about to explode, Mobica hurriedly changed the subject and returned to the giant python. Of course I will keep it. The license has been obtained. Kinzu casually took out the special animal breeding certificate from his pocket and proudly gestured to Mobica opposite him. He also raised his eyebrows slightly with the little Jack, who was watching the excitement with his chin in his hand. Fuck. This can be done? Why don't they just die? Mobica scratched her hair frantically. For the first time in her life, she felt a little dissatisfied with the regulations on adopting pets in her country. Keeping such a dangerous creature at home is simply a time bomb. However, she selectively forgot that even in her own home, there is such a certificate. After hearing this, Kinzu just smiled slightly, and then said proudly, "Don't worry, baby, I'm going to gather all the cowboys to see this big guy together. Let it live in the open in the future, so that everyone's panic should be less." Speaking of this, he began to feel depressed again. Since raising such a guy on the ranch, even Eva is not willing to stay at home alone. As for the reason, it's very simple: there is no sense of security. Gather the cowboys. Are you sure you won't scare them away? Helplessly looking at Kinzu, who was full of smug smiles on the opposite side, Mobica's heart at this moment was indeed like a small volcano, which could erupt at any time. "Don't worry, I believe they are all worldly wise." With a smug wink, Kinzu picked up the phone and called John directly. "What? Boss, are you kidding? Are the rumors in the town true?" The phone was connected after just 2 rings. After listening to Kinzu's narration, John's voice, which was a little frightened and complicated, came from the other end. "Of course, who am I kidding you? But, what are the rumors in the town?" At first, Kinzu was very proud of John's surprise, but at the end, Kinzu was a little stunned. "Rumors? Are there any rumors in the town?" Because the phone was on speakerphone, Kinzu cast a puzzled look at Mobica on the side. "Have you heard any rumors?" Chapter 295. News leaked. Seeing Kinzu's puzzled look, Mobica quickly shook her head. What a joke, she just came back, how could she have heard any rumors? "John, what rumors? Explain it clearly." Since he couldn't figure it out, Kinzu asked directly. Anyway, he was the boss, who was he afraid of? "It's like this, I also heard from a few old friends that a giant python appeared in the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains, and it was conquered by you, the boss who entered the mountain, and the treasure guarded by the giant python was also obtained by you, the boss." At the end of the story, John laughed himself. Obviously, he was very disdainful of such rumors, otherwise he would not have waited until Kinzu called before he said it. "Well, there is a giant python, but unfortunately, I don't know if remains can be considered a treasure." After Kinzu heard what John said, his heart tightened slightly, but he immediately pretended to be helpless and complained to John with a smile. After a few more words, John said that he would gather all the cowboys immediately and hold a party in the evening for everyone to get together. After hanging up the phone, Kinzu sat on the soft sofa and fell into deep thought. Could it be? Did the police already know that there was a notebook outside? After thinking about it, Kinzu shook his head again. This was impossible. At the time, he put the box directly into the storage backpack, and no one would find it. Moreover, even if they really knew that there was a notebook outside, they would not know what was recorded in it. Besides, the sinking of this ship could not have been recorded by the authorities, but no news has been spread until now. It is conceivable that the authorities should not want this news to be leaked. Thinking of this, Kinzu smiled suddenly, looked up at Mobica, who was curious next to him, and said, "Baby, everyone will have a party in the evening, do you want to stay and join us?" Hearing that Kinzu wanted to invite her, Mobica's heart was pounding, and she also wanted to stay here for a while. But after thinking about it, she shook her head and said helplessly, "It's too late, I have to send Jack back, otherwise Joseph will be worried." Although she wanted to stay here for a while, she didn't want her parents to find out about their relationship now. Since she said so, Kinzu didn't try to keep her. He was also afraid that Joseph would come to him with a kitchen knife. So he smiled and said, "Okay, then you should be careful on the road. Don't forget to come tomorrow. I guess Lim's construction will have a reply tomorrow." Nodding, Mobica indicated that she knew, turned her head and looked at Jack, who was leisurely on the side, and the smile on her face became particularly bright. "Dear brother, let's go home." Mobica's extremely gentle voice called out, not to mention little Jack. Even Kinzu next to him shuddered involuntarily. Looking at Mobica's fake smile, Kinzu couldn't help but look at the frightened little Jack with a sympathetic look. It was estimated that this child would inevitably have a meal of bamboo shoots and fried meat when he went back. Sister, I haven't said goodbye to my friends yet." Looking at his elder sister's angelic smile, little Jack couldn't speak properly. "Well, come, I'll accompany you to say goodbye to your friends." With that, Mobica pulled the reluctant little Jack and said goodbye to little Jerry, Duddu and Daha one by one. In the end, Kinzu ignored the little Jack's sighs for help, and helped Mobica with a smile to get the reluctant little guy into the car. Then Kinzu looked at his eyes full of innocence and grievance, and Kinzu couldn't help shrugging. Child, you wish yourself good luck. Watching the car slowly go away, Kinzu waved his hands vigorously again, and then turned around and walked back to the villa. After lying on the sofa for a while, Kinzu suddenly remembered the dinner party in the evening. Today, Eva was assigned to John as an assistant by him, so what about the party in the evening? Scratching his head and thinking for a long time, Kinzu still resisted the urge to call Eva and stood up reluctantly. There was no other way. Eva was not here, so he had to do it alone. It was not that he felt sorry for Eva and did not let her do housework, but Kinzu felt that he was really wasting his talent. Yes, a waste of talent. Perhaps he had a guilty conscience. He thought about it for a long time last night. He recruited Eva to be in charge of the management of the manor. However, because he was a little lazy, well, really, just as lazy as the gap between his fingernails, Eva, the designated person in charge of the manor, gloriously became a blonde cook. By the time he took out some ingredients that he would use in the evening, thawed them, cleaned them and put them on plates, it was already past 6 o'clock in the evening. Hey, sorry, boss, I've left you alone today. Kinzu hadn't had time to bring out the ingredients when the door of the villa was pushed open. Soon, Eva, wearing a tight denim outfit, appeared in front of Kinzu. It's okay. You're just in time. Help me carry it. With a casual wave of his hand, Kinzu, Eva and Dale, who had come in, brought the prepared ingredients to the long table outside and set them up. At this moment, the sky outside had gradually darkened, with only a ray of light in the distance still floating faintly. Cowboys and fishermen also came in groups of 3 or 5, and began to work happily around several grills. Hey, boss, where's the python? I heard from Eva that it's 6 or 7 meters long. John squatted beside the grill, waiting for the ingredients, and occasionally chatting with Will next to him. Boss, hurry up and call it out for us to see. Is it because there are so many of us that it got scared? Yes, hurry up and call it out. We're waiting to see. It's right behind. Do you want to go and have a look? Kinzu, who was a little overwhelmed by the noise of these guys, pointed casually at the boundless sea behind that villa and looked at these guys with a teasing look on his face. Do you dare to go? In the sea? Is this giant python or a water python? Boss, didn't I hear that you were caught by this guy in the forest? With a look of surprise on his face, Ryan put down the barbecue he had just picked up and became interested. I don't know either. It should be considered amphibious, right? Kinzu coughed awkwardly. He really didn't understand what the thing was. Okay, hurry up and get this guy out. John waved his hand to interrupt the voices of the remaining few people, then turned around and signaled to Kinzu to hurry up. I would like to thank Fengzi and Xiaowei Holingzi for their support. I will have to work hard tomorrow. The plan to update more chapters has gone wrong. I can only see if I can update more chapters during the Dragon Boat Festival. I hope you can forgive me. Chapter 296 The Cowboy's Amazement. Kinzu was speechless when he saw the cowboy's expectant eyes. Where was the panic? Where was the fear? Something was wrong with the script. Helplessly, he waved casually at the dark corner behind the villa, and at the same time, he told the big guy hovering there to come quickly. Under the expectant gaze of the cowboys and fishermen, something seemed to move in the dark corner behind the villa, and a little golden light appeared against the sunset. As time went by, the flickering golden light gradually gathered into a floating straight line. Then, in the eyes of the crowd, which were either horrified, expectant, or unbelievable, the golden python slowly twisted its increasingly strong waist and swam towards the crowd. God, this guy is so beautiful, boss, is this a golden python? Jing was indeed experienced, and John was the first to react, looking at Kinzu with amazement. He was not only amazed at the mighty and huge size of this big guy, but also at Kinzu's superb animal taming skills. If he could tame even such a cold-blooded beast, what else could he not do? God, this is incredible. How can a python be tamed like this? Yes, this is simply incredible. The magical East, there are so many magical things that we don't know about. Listening to the conversations coming from his ears, Kinzu couldn't help but smile proudly. Come and worship me. Boss, can I touch it? Will drank the beer in his hand in one gulp, strode to Kinzu, and looked at him with a fanatical look. All now believed more that Kinzu was the incarnation of the druid, who came to save all things in the world. Of course, no problem, big guy, come here quickly, be good. After stroking the snake's head a few times, Kinzu gestured to it, and then saw it lower its head slightly, leaning against Will's thigh, and began to rub against it. Being approached by such a big guy, even Will, who had fought a tiger shark in the past, couldn't help but feel his legs go weak. This had nothing to do with courage, but a biological instinct. Looking at the well-behaved golden python, Kinzu remembered that he hadn't given this guy a name yet. Thinking of naming, Kinzu's brows couldn't help but wrinkle. He was really not good at this problem. Scratching his head and hesitating for a long time, until the golden python walked around everyone and memorized everyone's smell one by one, Kinzu still couldn't think of a good name. According to the previous routine, should he be called Xiaojun this time? No, Xiaojun already has one. After thinking for a long time with a frown, Kinzu still couldn't decide on a better name, but his expression scared everyone. Boss, what's wrong with you? Looking at Kinzu with a little worry, John felt a little scared. Could this be the Chinese legend of being possessed by a demon? Oh, I'm fine, I was just thinking too much. Kinzu came back to his senses from his contemplation and smiled embarrassedly. He decided not to think about it for the time being. Seeing that everyone was still looking at the giant python with an unsatisfied look, he couldn't help but say, "Okay, since everyone is not afraid of this guy, I will let him go in the pasture. If you suddenly see him in the future, don't be afraid. This guy is very docile." After saying that, Kinzu also deliberately glanced at Eva. That look seemed to say that it was specifically to remind you. Eva, who was arranging the ingredients, seemed to sense that someone was watching her. When she looked back, a few moving blushes appeared on her fair face. He rolled his eyes at this annoying guy fiercely. Didn't he know that girls are timid? What's so funny? Since the matter had been discussed, Kinzu invited everyone to start eating, and even made some beef for the little guys and the giant python. However, when Kinzu saw the giant python swallowing several kilograms of tender beef in one gulp, and still looked unsatisfied, he couldn't help but start to worry about his wallet again. Why are all the people at home eating? The party didn't end until after 9 o'clock in the evening. Everyone had drunk almost all the wine and was staggering when walking. Fortunately, the living area was not far from here, otherwise Kinzu was really worried that they would not be able to return home. After they all left, facing the mess on the ground, Kinzu smiled bitterly and shook his head. Behind every lively scene, there is a mess. However, Kinzu just sighed pretentiously, and he would not clean it up. He patted his butt, left Eva and the other two girls, and went back upstairs to take a shower. After taking a shower and returning to the room, Kinzu was still thinking about the naming, so he picked up his mobile phone while lying on the bed and looked at the time. It was not yet 10 o'clock, and he didn't know if Zumengyo had gone to work. The video beeped a few times before it was connected. After the screen shook for a while, Zumengyo's flawless pretty face appeared in the video. "How come you are so punctual? I just entered the office and your video followed me." After fixing the video, Zumengyo leaned on the boss chair and stretched her body, revealing her perfect body curve. Kinzu, who had just drunk some wine and was a little excited, immediately became a little excited. "Hehe, isn't this a telepathic connection, don't you think?" He laughed a few times, and Kinzu wanted to stick his eyeballs to the screen so that he could see the attractive scenery on the opposite side clearly. Zumengyo on the opposite side chuckled, and her two big eyes turned into crescents, which looked particularly charming. Just when he was about to speak, someone knocked on the door of the office. Zumengyo, who was smiling like a flower, immediately put away her smile. The pretty face that was gentle and charming just now suddenly became a little indifferent. She opened her red lips and uttered two words lightly. "Come in." This sudden change scared Kinzu on the opposite side. The emotions that were originally so high that they were about to explode disappeared without a trace like the seawater at the ebb tide. He shook his head helplessly and smiled bigly. No wonder it is said that changing faces is a skill that every woman is born with. In just a few seconds, she changed from a gentle and virtuous big sister to a cold goddess who kept people away from her. Zumengyo on the opposite side did not hang up that video, so Kinzu could still clearly see what happened on the opposite side. Zumengyo, who was originally leaning back on the sofa, sat up slightly. Her black hair was casually spread out behind her head. Her charming face was calm at the moment. Her sexy red lips were slightly parted, and she was talking to someone coming in from the opposite side. The unbearable 520 is finally over. I wonder how much dog food you guys have been fed. 23,333 Chapter 297 Cheese and Silver Light. After a moment, under Kinzu's stunned gaze, Zumengyo's indifferent expression instantly thawed, just like a spring breeze that brushed Kinzu's heart. Well, someone from the company just wanted to see me, let's continue. Ahem, it's like this. Today I showed the giant python to the cowboys on the ranch, and this time I found that we haven't named it yet. Shrugging helplessly, Kinzu twisted his body slightly, changed to a more comfortable position, and then told Zumengyo that purpose of this time. Name it. When Zumengyo heard that she had to name it, her pretty face, which was originally as smiling as a flower, was immediately tangled up. Obviously, naming it was also a headache for her. Yes, give it a name. Besides, our manta ray doesn't have a name yet. How long has it been? Why don't you just give it a random name? It's just a small matter, and you still ask me about it. The already troubled pretty face became even more troubled. Zumengyo started to act like a spoiled child. She was really not good at naming. It's not that she doesn't know how to name a child. If you ask her to name a child, she won't even think about it. But for a pet, if you give it a vulgar name, it will feel like a bunch of people will come running to it when you call it on the street. However, if you give it an elegant name, it will be out of touch with reality and awkward when you call it. Don't just give it a random name. Who cares if it's elegant or vulgar? Anyway, we don't expect to take them out for a walk. Kinzu was a little anxious after hearing Zumengyo's spoiled words. It's not that he didn't want to give it a name. The key point is, isn't Xiaojun already taken? Should it be called Xiao Wang? Xiao Mane? Thinking about it, Kinzu felt a chill. Then let's call it Cheese. After thinking for a long time, Zumengyo finally set a name weakly. Cheese. Cheese. Seeing Zumengyo nodded, Kinzu was speechless. A snake, you call it cheese, what's wrong? Want to have a spicy snake stew? How about it? It's okay if it's okay, if not, you can do it yourself. Zumengyo picked up a box of cheese slices from the table, opened it and put a slice in her mouth, looking at Kinzu with a somewhat embarrassed tone. She would not admit that she really wanted to eat cheese. Cheese, cheese, cheese. She repeated it back and forth in her mouth several times. Although it was still a bit awkward, looking at Zumengyo's expression opposite her, how dare you say you don't want to try it, Kinzu wisely raised his hands and surrendered. After all, he came to find someone. Okay, the golden python will be called Cheese from now on, but what about the manta ray? How do you say it? What do you mean? One for each person, you want me to name them all? With a sly smile, Zumengyo crossed her arms in front of her chest, but she still looked as if nothing had happened, staring at Kinzu with interest, obviously waiting for his name. Well, let me think about it. Swallowing hard, Kinzu stared at Zumengyo's hands intently, wishing he could replace them directly. Bad guy, what are you looking at? Hurry up. Feeling a little uncomfortable under Kinzu's burning gaze, Zumengyo put down her hands, twisted her body unnaturally, and then looked at the big pervert opposite with a coquettish look. Oh, I'm coming. With an awkward smile, Kinzu retracted his prying eyes and began to think seriously. After thinking for a long time, Kinzu thought about it with his chin held low. Many names of Xiaoyin flashed in his mind, almost blurting out. However, after looking at the eyes that were staring at him, Kinzu swallowed the names back. He began to scratch his head. How about calling this a hard block? After struggling for a long time, Kinzu couldn't think of anything good, so he looked at Zumengyo expectantly, hoping to get her praise. PFFT, cough cough, why don't you say silver ingot? Zumengyo, who had just taken a sip of coffee, almost spit out the coffee. Silver block. What the hell? Cough cough, think about it, a silver ingot is not as big as a silver block, so isn't the color of the manta ray silver? Isn't it like a big silver block in the sea? At first, Kinzu felt a little guilty, but the more he talked, the more confident he became, as if what he said made sense. Zumengyo gave this guy a helpless look, and without any explanation, she used her veto power and thought again. Why? Doesn't it sound good? Kinzu felt very wronged. Silver nugget, what a high-sounding name. Why doesn't it sound good? Vulgar, why don't you call the golden python a gold nugget? Looking at Kinzu with contempt, Zumengyo looked disgusted. I have thought about it. I originally planned to call one a gold nugget and the other a silver nugget. Finally, after a heated discussion, the name of the little manta ray was finally decided. Silverlight. Yes, Qin finally won the world silver and only agreed to change the work nugget. So, after compromise and negotiation, the two sides finally decided on this high-end and classy name, Silverlight. Okay, I'll hang up first. I still have work to deal with here. After talking about the matter, Zhu Wenguo stretched again. It was early in the morning and she hadn't started work yet. After saying a few more sweet words, Qin hung up that video while Zhu Wenguo was grumbling, and he laughed a few times while holding the phone. The next day, Qin slept until noon, and then woke up with a rapid phone ring. He groped for his phone from the bedside in a daze, and picked it up without even looking at it. Hello, Mr. Qin, I'm Lin Yu from Lin's Construction. I wonder if you have time now? I'll give you the price of the project. The sweet female voice from the other end of the phone made Qin's confused mind a little clearer, but his tone was still lazy. Okay, go ahead, I'm listening. Lin Yu, who was sitting in his own office, heard the lazy voice coming from the topic, and couldn't help but look up at the clock hanging on the wall. It's already 11 o'clock. Although he was complaining about the extravagant life of the tycoon in his heart, Lin Yu still spoke with some respect. It's like this, Mr. Qin, including the reclamation of a river channel 10 meters wide and 3 meters deep, plus the paving of all with bluestone, as well as those ancient buildings and pavilions and some landscape design, our company's offer is, in total, $3 million. $3 million? Qin was immediately awakened. This was a matter of money, so he had to take it seriously. Thanks to Fengxi and you for their support, thank you. Chapter 298 Pet System Upgrade completed. How can it be so much? Even though he was mentally prepared, Qin was still shocked by the offer. $3 million. How much is that? If converted into RMB, it would be more than 20 million. Even with the outrageous housing prices in China, this money can buy a small Western-style house in a first-tier city and live comfortably. Originally, according to his idea, isn't it just to use a bulldozer to push out a river channel? At most, build a few pavilions here in the villa, and it will be done with hundreds of thousands of dollars, right? It's like this, Mr. Qin, the materials required in your renderings are all very high-grade bluestone, and we also need to import the materials of those ancient buildings from China, so this price is really the lowest, and we only make a living for the workers' wages. As if she had anticipated Qin's shock at the moment, Lin Yu on the other end of the phone carefully explained. To be honest, when the price was calculated, she was already prepared for the deal to fall through. The construction fee of up to $3 million made her no longer have any hope for it. Thinking of this, Lin Yu couldn't help but smile bigly. He didn't know where this young rich man found such an unreliable designer. This design is not a private residence at all. It is designed according to the national park. Wait a minute, let me make a phone call first. Qin hung up the phone with a dry cough, rubbing his sore eyes, holding the phone but not knowing what to do. Holding the phone, Qin wanted to call Mobica and say, baby, let's change the design. However, thinking about his bold words a few days ago, Qin wanted to slap himself in the face. This is all Green Franklin. Although he still has some family background, he can't stand such tossing. But there is no way now, man. Words spoken are like water poured out. Although it is not possible to say that they fall to the ground, there is no reason to take them back. Lin Yu, who was in a daze in the office, looked at the call on the phone and felt a drum in his heart. But after hesitating for a long time, he bit his sexy lips and decided to die. It was just a matter of losing the business. Hello, Miss Lin. I agree with the quotation. When can you start the work? Yes, Mr. Qin, it's okay. If you cancel it, then, what? Mr. Qin, what did you say? Lin Yu, who answered the phone, was about to say a few polite words to save the embarrassment of cancelling the order. In a trance, he seemed to hear something different and asked again urgently. I accept your quotation. When can you start the work? Rubbing his temple, Qin had no choice but to repeat what he had just said. Okay, Mr. Qin, we can sign the contract this afternoon and start the work tomorrow. Lin Yu, who was sure that she had not heard it wrong, was completely excited. A big order of $3 million. This was the largest order the company had ever hit since its establishment. Well, okay, see you this afternoon. After saying that, he ignored the cheering and thanking voice of the bespectacled girl named Lin Yu on the other side and hung up the phone directly. Qin was afraid that if he hung up the phone later, he would change his mind. That was $3 million. Putting the phone aside, Yu got out of bed leisurely, came to the French window, opened the curtains and looked at the bright sun outside, and took a deep breath. After a while, Yu was about to go to the bathroom to wash up, but suddenly remembered that when he was half asleep yesterday, he seemed to hear the mechanical reminder of the system in his ear. So Yu put on his pajamas, half lying on the soft big bed again, and turned on the system in his mind. Ding, the pet system has been upgraded. Please check it. As soon as the system was turned on, a notification message popped up. Obviously, this was the message from last night. Upgrade completed. Yu muttered, and opened the pet panel. I saw that there were only 10 pet positions originally, but now there are 15, and the others seem to have no changes. System, what's going on? The pet system has been upgraded for so long, and only 5 places have been added. Although the places are also valuable, they are really useless for Yu, who doesn't even have 10 pets now. Host, this pet system upgrade has updated 3 contents. The first is that 5 places have been added to the pet column. The second is that the pet's growth limit has been increased. And the third is the update of pet skills. After listening to the system's mechanical explanation, Yu's head became even bigger. What's the difference between you saying this and not saying it? He shook his head helplessly. It's terrible to have no wisdom. But he didn't think about it. Shouldn't it be more terrible to have wisdom? No longer relying on the system, Yu opened the pet system again and looked at the list of pets in it. When did he have so many pets? Top quality tissue 3-color coyote, Xiaojin, Siberian husky, Daha, Akultik horse, Xiaobai, happy eagle, Hawa, manta ray, silver light, golden python, cheese. In the blink of an eye, he hit 6 little guys, some cute and some fierce, not including Xiaoxiahe and Pape, as well as Jerry and Dadu. With this calculation, it seemed that he was really evolving into a zoo. Shaking his head, Yu smiled bigly. It had been a long time since he had seen Xiaojin. It seemed that it was inconvenient to be too far away. Looking back at the list, Yu suddenly found something wrong. It seemed that except for the golden giant python, which was at the gold commander level, all other pets were bronze and silver levels. But what about now? Well, they have not changed now, except for the conspicuous gold level, which was replaced by one word. Spirit. Moreover, this spirit seemed to be vague, as if it would fly away at any time. System, what's the matter with this spirit? Where is my golden commander level python? Dear host, spirit represents spirit beast, and spirit beast is a level higher than golden commander. Spirit beast? What is that? And isn't the python golden level? How did it become a spirit beast? After hearing the system's explanation, Yu's heart suddenly became uneasy. What the hell is this? Host, a spirit beast refers to a beast with some long-range attack methods, but it is much smarter than ordinary beasts. As for the golden python, as a reward for system upgrade, the first pet to reach the golden commander level will be automatically upgraded to a spirit beast. It's a new week, and I continue to ask for subscriptions, recommendations and rewards. The difficult 520 and 521 are finally over. Thank you to the book friends who have always supported Liuun. Chapter 299. Sharing vision. Scratching his head, Yu was speechless. Why did he feel that this system was becoming more and more mysterious? Shaking his head, Yu stopped thinking about these things and opened the pet skill panel again, ready to see what skills were updated. He remembered that it seemed to be a pet capture and gene enhancement before. After skillfully opening the skill panel, as expected, there was another skill on it, vision sharing. What kind of skill is this? Yu muttered in confusion and opened the skill introduction casually. However, in his heart, there seemed to be a sense of expectation quietly dissipating. Sure enough, when Yu saw the skill introduction clearly, his casual expression suddenly became excited. Sure enough, it was the literal meaning of the skill. Yu repeated the skill introduction word by word, and even his little heart couldn't help but soar to 180 miles. Vision sharing LV1. Spirit level skill, you can have the vision of a pet that has reached the spirit beast level for a short period of time. The length of time increases with the skill level. Yu couldn't help swallowing his saliva. He felt that his throat had become extremely dry. He wanted to drink 2 large buckets of boiled water to quench his thirst. Vision sharing, this is simply against the sky. Even if it can only be used for a few minutes, it can be called a divine skill. What does this mean? This means that he will never be caught if he goes out to peek at girls taking a bath. Ahem, okay, Yu admitted that he was evil. He felt that if he really used vision sharing to peek at girls taking a bath, he would be punished by heaven. However, even so, being able to have the vision of a beast is also a very against the sky thing, even if its conditions are a bit harsh. In particular, after having the vision of a marine creature, it means that the sunken treasures in the sea are thinking of him and waving from afar, as if they're looking forward to his arrival. Spirit beast? Coincidentally, didn't the golden python just upgrade to a spirit beast? Thinking of this, Kinzu's blood began to boil. He didn't care that he had an appointment to discuss the contract with someone in the afternoon. He looked at the time and ignored the two little guys wagging their tails in front of the bed. He just lay down on the bed again and started his first attempt. He opened the pet system, found the pet skills, selected the vision sharing, and chose to use it. Immediately, a list of connections popped up on the panel, and on the list, there was only a lonely name on it, the golden python, cheese. Looking at the lonely name on it, Kinzu didn't hesitate and immediately chose to connect. In an instant, Kinzu felt a strong sense of dizziness, which suddenly hit him. The feeling of the tide instantly annihilated his perception. His eyes blurred, and when Kinzu opened his eyes again, the world in front of him immediately became different. How to say it? Looking at the blood red in front of him, Kinzu felt that it should be similar to wearing night vision goggles. Just when he wanted to experience this wonderful feeling carefully, his eyes suddenly became clear again. The sky was still the same sky, blue and clear. The sun was still the same sun, bright as fire. The earth was still the same earth, boundless. But everything seemed to be different again. The trees in the distance became tall and strong, and the big trees seemed to be piercing the sky, standing straight. The grass nearby also became thick and tall, and the grass seemed to be blowing towards him under the breeze. That feeling. How to say it, it's like your vision was suddenly pressed to the ground, and everything needs you to look up. However, this also made Kinzu more certain that he should be in Cheese's field of vision now, right? Feeling the breeze blowing gently on himself, and feeling cool, it was as if he was outside without clothes. Although it was not cold, it was uncomfortable. After looking at it for a long time, Kinzu felt a little uncomfortable after the novelty at the beginning. It was very uncomfortable to look at one place motionlessly. So, Kinzu tried to turn his head to see where he was now. What he didn't expect was that he actually turned his head and could actually control the giant python to turn its head. Looking at the extremely luxurious villa in front of him, Kinzu was so excited that he wanted to cry. This means that he has an extra animal clone, right? No, not one, but 15. When all his pets are upgraded to spiritual beasts, then he can watch whoever he wants take a bath. Ahem, okay, it's evil again. Shaking his big head, Kinzu laughed foolishly, but when it came out of the giant python's mouth, it turned into a hissing sound. Moreover, he felt that his tongue was always spitting out uncontrollably. However, compared to having the vision of the giant python, it was nothing. Then, Kinzu began to try to move again, and began to walk in an S shape, twisting left and right. Well, Kinzu felt really awkward. You can imagine that your hands and feet are tied up, and you can only twist and turn on the ground to see how long you can hold on. Kinzu doesn't know about others, but he can hold on. Then again, if you are given a snake with vision, you can definitely do it. Twisting with difficulty, Kinzu slowly wandered around the villa with his nearly 7-meter body length. Cry, a sharp eagle cry sounded in Kinzu's ears, and suddenly, he felt that all the scales on his body seemed to stand up. Subconsciously shrinking his body, Kinzu hovered and looked at the sky. He didn't come back to his senses until all the actions were done. The series of actions just now seemed to be the instinct of the body, and were completed completely by subconsciousness. Looking up at Haha and Pape hovering in the air, Kinzu felt helpless. Damn it, it's me. Obviously, the two overlords in the sky would not pay attention to his thoughts. Since ancient times, eagles and snakes seemed to be enemies. Although now, because of Kinzu, they did not start fighting as soon as they met, but they were not very friendly to each other. Just like now, Kinzu was warned by these two guys just by getting closer to the villa. The villa is their territory. Do you dare to come in without the owner? Looking at the two guys in the sky, Kinzu shook his head and smiled bigly. If it weren't for him, I guess Cheese would have given them a nice comb each. The majesty of the spirit beast is not something that such an ordinary beast can challenge. Thank you for the reward from Langxian 2, and thank you for the helmsman from Shinking. The additional update can only be put at the end of the month. Please forgive me. Chapter 300 time limit. But now. Peace is the most precious thing. Although Kinzu could feel that the giant python was very angry, he still shook his big head, swayed and controlled it, and crawled towards the sea. What a joke, the sea is our world, why do we have to go against other people's force? After severely criticizing this golden giant python that ignored the overall situation, Kinzu controlled it and slowly sank into the sea. Hiss. There is only one word for cool. Kinzu now only felt that all the cells in his body seemed to spread and stretch suddenly, and there was joy all over his body. It seems that this guy is really a sea python. Feeling the changes in himself, Kinzu couldn't help but muttered in his heart. Because he suddenly found that the water seemed to be the most suitable for this big guy. Since entering the sea, not only did he feel comfortable all over, but even the awkward body at the beginning suddenly became obedient. In the calm sea, Kinzu swung his thick long tail vigorously. In an instant, the originally calm seabed actually created a vacuum for a moment because of the excessive speed of the tail. Then, the seawater merged into one again, but countless bubbles surged and floated towards the sea surface. Although it can't be said that it hits wherever it points, it's not far off. With great satisfaction, he looked at the power of his tail. According to Kinzu's own estimation, the force of this tail was more than 100 pounds. He let the fierce water flow brought by his tail wash over his increasingly large body. Kinzu twisted his body, which suddenly became extremely flexible, and rushed forward quickly. Perhaps because this is an nearshore area, Kinzu wandered around the beach for a long time. In addition to the delicate and soft sand that shone with a charming halo, there was nothing else. Not to mention coral reefs and other underwater plants, he didn't even see 2 or 3 small fish. Well, Kinzu understood again. This sea python is good at swimming, but why did it go ashore to hunt? In the nearby offshore waters, where else can there be fish except the beach? And with the python's current appetite, how long would it take to find enough food nearby? As for why it doesn't go to a farther place, it's very simple. This guy is a road idiot and homesick, so he doesn't dare. On land, he can still rely on his own smell to find home, but in the sea, where can he smell the smell? After wandering around for a while, Kinzu really didn't find anything fun except the sand grains that were shining brightly under the sun through the seawater. Just when he was about to continue to swim deeper into the sea, Kinzu felt dizzy for no reason. Then, when he opened his eyes again, it was the crystal chandelier above his head that was shining brightly. What's going on? Shaking his dizzy head, Kinzu was full of dissatisfaction. How could it suddenly change back at the critical moment? I took off my pants, and you actually played this trick on me? System, what's going on? Gently rubbing his throbbing temple, Kinzu fully demonstrated his good style of asking the system for help when he didn't know anything, and asked directly. Dear host, the LV1 vision sharing only has a connection time of 10 minutes, and it can only be used once every 5 hours. Ah? No way. Isn't this too cruel? Listening to the mechanical voice of the system, Kinzu was full of grievances. What's going on? Just 10 minutes, what can I do? And there is a limit, it can only be used once every 5 hours, such a pitfall. Since I got the system, it's really the first time I've encountered it. In just 10 minutes, let alone exploring the stars and the sea, even the most basic peek at my beautiful female bodyguard taking a bath, the time is not enough. However, no matter how Kinzu complained, the system ignored him. In this kind of situation, he could only fulfill his duty of explanation. Helplessly, Kinzu had to get up from the bed reluctantly and went into the bathroom to wash up. When he came out after washing up, he looked at the time. Wow, it was already 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Moreover, the little guys in the bedroom had already gone crazy somewhere. Sighing and sighing about this comfortable life, Kinzu changed his clothes, rubbed his empty stomach, and went downstairs. When he came downstairs, facing the empty living room, Kinzu suddenly felt uncomfortable. Every time he went downstairs, there would always be 1 or 2 pretty beauties sitting on the sofa waiting for him. Moreover, Eva would always help him bring out hot breakfast from the kitchen. But now, well, there are still a few guys waiting for him. Helplessly looking at the 2 little guys lying on the carpet, hungry and listless, Kinzu smiled bitterly and walked into the cold storage. Eva followed John, and Dale also went to help, so naturally they didn't come back for dinner. Although Eva also wanted to come back to help Kinzu prepare lunch, and then eat before going over, Kinzu didn't agree. If for no other reason, since he had hired someone to do something, he naturally couldn't ask them to come back and make lunch for him, right? Otherwise, let alone other people's opinions, Kinzu himself would feel a little embarrassed. Eva didn't make lunch, and Dale didn't know how to cook, so she couldn't wait for Kinzu to cook for her every day, right? So she just followed Eva and ate in the cafeteria at noon. As for why Eva still cooked at night, Kinzu felt very justified. Who asked them to live here? They also had to eat, so he just followed to eat. Well, that's it. Fortunately, there was always a lot of fresh beef frozen in the villa's cold storage, so Kinzu ended to take out a small piece, put the pot in the kitchen, and started cooking directly. When they saw Kinzu enter the kitchen, the two little guys who were originally listless suddenly became energetic. They ran into the kitchen with their food bowls in their mouths. Squeak. Little Jerry on a sofa squeaked at the two little guys with disdain. Really, you are so hungry, but you don't eat the fruit I gave you. Da Hectors and Xiao Hectors ignored the guy who was gloating over his misfortune. What a joke. Our bodies are carnivores. How can we eat vegetarian food? We would rather die of starvation than eat it. Well, but if it really comes to that, we will discuss it. Staring at the unreliable owner in front of them, the two little huskies couldn't help but feel nervous. What if? Well, what if? What if the owner really forgets one day and doesn't give his two brothers food? Should they accept his kindness? This is really a very puzzling question. After thinking for a long time, the two little huskies stopped thinking about this puzzling question when Kinzu put the fragrant beef into the bowl they brought over. With their not too short legs, the two little guys happily ran back to their dining area and began to enjoy their late lunch. Fin est captulo much as great as Pelaga hasta el final. No esse olvidentid al like busgasms contenido exclusivo ixo inmediato. Suscribita news teropatrian. Recurda, card alike, suscription odonakin nos anima continued. Great as a todos nos vemos on el próximo video.